deep in the steel and concrete maze of the Henderson construction site, where the symphony of jackhammers and welding torches never stops. A different kind of battle was unfolding when veteran architect Marcus Chen arrived with 30 years of experience. And a hearing aid, Foreman Blake Donovan saw only weakness. Not the man who had designed some of the most revolutionary structures in 3 continents. The mockery started small. Exaggerated mouth movements, unnecessarily loud instructions snickering from the corner crew. But mockery has a way of evaporating when faced with genius. As Marcus unrolled his hand-drawn blueprints, intricate, revolutionary, designs that would save the project millions, Donovan's face transformed from smug superiority to naked panic. He couldn't decipher a single line of the masterpiece before him. What secret technique did Marcus use in his blueprints that left every engineer on site speechless? Subscribe to our channel for more stories of underdogs who turned the tables when everyone least expected it. Marcus Chen tightened his grip on his leather portfolio as the taxi approached the Henderson construction site. Through the window, the half-finished structure loomed against the morning sky, a $200 million commercial complex already 3 months behind schedule according to the brief he'd received. The cab pulled up to the security gate where a guard in a yellow vest barely glanced at his credentials before waving him through. "Main office is the double-wide trailer to the left," he grunted, pointing toward a cluster of temporary structures surrounded by mud. As Marcus stepped out, his Oxford shoes immediately sank half an inch into the muck. He steadied himself, adjusted his hearing aid with a practiced motion and surveyed the chaos before him. Materials scattered without apparent organization. Workers clustered in small groups, some clearly idle. Equipment sitting unused. His trained eye cataloged a dozen inefficiencies before he'd taken 10 steps. "You must be the specialist corporate sent to babysit us," the voice came from behind. Marcus turned to find a barrel-chested man in a hard hat striding toward him, flanked by 2 others. The speaker wore a high-visibility vest with Site Foreman printed across the back. His face was weathered, eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Blake Donovan," the man said, extending a calloused hand. "Running this show for 18 years now." "Marcus Chen," he replied, matching the firm handshake. "Architectural consultant." Donovan's eyes flicked to Marcus's hearing aid, then back to his face. Something shifted in the foreman's expression, a subtle tightening around the mouth, a reassessment. "Consultant, huh? How many buildings have you actually built, Mr. Chen?" Donovan's voice carried just enough mockery to establish dominance without crossing into outright disrespect. "A careful calibration. 67 completed structures across 3 continents," Marcus answered calmly, "plus about 30 renovation projects of this scale or larger." Donovan's eyebrows raised slightly. "Well, aren't we accomplished?" He turned to his companions. "This is Roy, my assistant foreman, and Vince, head of security." Both men nodded curtly, mirroring Donovan's barely concealed hostility. "Let's get you situated and then we'll walk the site," Donovan said, already turning away. "Hope you brought boots. It gets messy out there." Marcus followed the 3 men toward the main trailer, noting how Donovan deliberately set a brisk pace. Through the site, workers paused to watch their procession, curious about the newcomer in the pressed shirt and tie. Inside the trailer, fluorescent lights hummed overhead. The space was divided into cubicles with blueprints and schedules papering. Every wall, a coffee maker in the corner, filled the air with the smell of burnt beans. "This will be your space," Donovan said, gesturing to a desk wedged beside the door. It sat directly under an air conditioning vent that rattled loudly. "Bathrooms outside. Password for the Wi-Fi is on that post-it." Marcus set down his portfolio and scanned the site plans mounted on the nearest wall. Immediately, he spotted critical issues with the foundation support columns. The placement was inefficient, requiring excess materials while creating potential stress points. "Problem already?" Donovan asked, noticing his focus. "Just getting oriented," Marcus replied. Donovan leaned closer, speaking softly. "Corporate might think we need saving, but my crew knows what they're doing. We're behind because of supplier issues and permit delays, not because we need some outside expert telling us how to pour concrete." Before Marcus could respond, Donovan straightened and said loudly, "Roy will take you through the safety protocols, then we'll tour the site." He turned to leave, but not before muttering to his assistant, just loud enough to be heard, "Corporate sent us a defective architect. This should be interesting." Marcus pretended not to hear, but his fingers instinctively moved to his hearing aid again, a habit formed over decades of pretending not to notice such comments. He'd heard worse, much worse, and he'd outlasted them all. The safety orientation was mercifully brief. Roy, a younger, leaner version of Donovan with the same perpetual scowl, handed Marcus a hard hat, reflective vest, and a dog-eared safety manual. "Sign here, here, and initial here," Roy said, tapping. "A clipboard form. Says you won't sue if you fall into wet concrete or get your tie caught in something." Marcus signed without comment. He'd been on hundreds of construction sites across the world. The dangers were familiar companions. Ready for the grand tour? Donovan reappeared in the doorway, jingling his keys. "Let's see if those fancy degrees prepared you for real construction." Outside, the site buzzed with mid-morning activity. Cement mixers growled, nail guns popped in rapid succession, and the steel skeleton of the future building rose above them. Like the ribs of a massive beast, Donovan led the way, pointing out various sections with a proprietorial air. "East wing's going to be retail. West is office space. Parking structure, there's giving us hell with the water table." Marcus noticed how Donovan deliberately walked ahead when explaining critical details. His back turned, voice lowered. A textbook power move designed to force Marcus to either strain, to hear, or continually ask him to repeat himself. "What was that about the foundation?" Marcus asked after the third such instance. Donovan turned, eyes gleaming with satisfaction. "Having trouble keeping up? The acoustics out here are challenging," Marcus replied evenly. "Perhaps we could walk side by side to facilitate communication." A flicker of annoyance crossed Donovan's face at being so directly called out. "Yeah, sure," but he made no effort to modify his pace. As they rounded the east section, a group of workers near a cement mixer nudged each other as Marcus approached. One mimed adjusting a hearing aid, triggering muffled laughter from his companions. "So, Chen," Donovan said, louder now, "corporate says you're some kind of miracle worker. Turned around that disaster in Singapore. What was it? Structural failure? Foundational? Miscalculation?" Marcus corrected. "The original engineer failed to account for reclaimed land settlement patterns. And how'd you fix that? Magic?" Donovan's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Micropile reinforcement combined with a redesigned load distribution system," Marcus replied. He pointed to a section of exposed foundation nearby. "Similar to what you might need here. Your northern support columns are over-engineered while the southern section looks underspecified." Donovan's smile vanished. "Our foundation is solid. The design indicates otherwise." A tense silence stretched between them until a worker approached, clipboard in hand. "Boss, supplier called. Steel deliveries delayed again." Donovan swore under his breath. "That's the third time." He turned to Marcus with barely concealed hostility. "See? This is why we're behind. Not because of my team's work." "May I see the supplier contracts?" Marcus asked. "What for?" "Alternative sourcing options. I have contacts who might expedite." "We don't need your contacts," Donovan cut him off. "I've been dealing with these suppliers for 15 years. "Of course," Marcus said, backing down tactically. No point forcing confrontation on his first day. They continued the tour, Donovan growing increasingly terse as Marcus asked pointed questions about load calculations and material choices. By the time they circled back to the main office, the Foreman's jaw was set in a hard line. "Got enough for your report to corporate?" Donovan asked, not bothering to hide his resentment now. "It's a starting point," Marcus replied. "I'll need access to the complete blueprints and material specifications. Talk to Janice in the office. She'll get you whatever corporate authorized." Donovan checked his watch ostentatiously. "If there's nothing else, some of us have real work to do." Without waiting for a response, he strode away, leaving Marcus at the trailer door. Through the window, Marcus could see curious faces watching him. The outsider, the interloper, the threat. Inside, Janice, a harried-looking woman with reading glasses perched on her head, barely looked up from her computer. "You the new guy?" "Paperwork's on the desk. Donovan said to give you access to the general blueprints only. Specific technical docs need his approval." Marcus thanked her and settled at his assigned workspace. The air conditioning unit above him rattled violently, blowing cold air directly onto his neck. Not a coincidence, he suspected. He spread out the general site plans and began making careful notes, occasionally adjusting his hearing aid to filter out the worst of the mechanical drone. The blueprints confirmed his initial assessment: fundamental design flaws throughout, compounded by poor execution. The project wasn't just behind schedule, it was heading for disaster. From the corner of his eye, he noticed two junior engineers at a nearby desk, whispering and looking his way. One mimed an exaggerated movement of turning something near his ear, followed by cupping his hand to it. The universal gesture of mockery. Marcus had seen it countless times before. He focused on his work, letting the familiar rhythm of analysis settle over him. In Hong Kong, his first mentor had taught him an ancient proverb: "The bamboo that bends is stronger than the oak that resists." For 30 years, he had been the bamboo, absorbing prejudice and mockery without breaking. By the end of the day, he had filled a notebook with observations and begun preliminary sketches for alternative approaches. As the office emptied, he remained, working by the glow of his desk lamp. His phone vibrated in his pocket. Mei Lin, his daughter, never forgot to check in on his first day at a new site. He stepped outside to take the call, breathing in the evening, air now free from diesel fumes and concrete dust. "How's the new project?" Mei Lin's voice was a balm after the day's subtle hostilities. "Challenging," he replied, gazing at the half-finished structure silhouetted against the darkening sky. The usual resistance. The hearing aid again? He smiled at her perceptiveness. Among other things. "Dad, you don't have to keep doing this. I can take out more student loans for med school. These construction dinosaurs don't deserve you." "It's not about deserving," he said softly. "It's about the building. The people who will use it. They deserve something that won't collapse around them." A long pause. "You're the most stubborn man I've ever known. I learned from your mother." Her laugh warmed him more than any heater could. "Call me tomorrow?" "Always." After ending the call, Marcus returned to his desk. The office was empty now, just the hum of electronics and the distant sounds of the night security patrol. He pulled out a fresh sheet of paper and his special drafting pens. Time to begin the real work. Dawn broke over the Henderson site, painting the skeletal framework in gold. Marcus had been there since 5:30 a.m., walking the perimeter alone, studying the structure in the oblique morning light that revealed imperfections invisible at noon. It was an old habit learned from Master Liang in Hong Kong. See the building at first light when the sun tells secrets. He ran his hand along a concrete pillar, feeling the subtle inconsistencies in the pour. Micro-fissures had already formed. Nothing catastrophic yet, but troubling. The mix ratio was off, or the curing process had been rushed. Either way, the foundation wouldn't support the planned upper floors without significant reinforcement. By 7, workers began arriving. They eyed him curiously, this outsider examining their handiwork before breakfast. Marcus nodded politely but continued his inspection, making notes in his leather-bound journal using his own specialized shorthand. Part traditional architectural notation, part Chinese calligraphy, part mathematical symbolism, developed over decades of problem-solving. Bit early for a desk jockey, isn't it? Marcus turned to find Donovan watching him, coffee cup in hand, expression caught between irritation and grudging respect. "I prefer seeing a site at different times of day," Marcus replied. "Morning light reveals structural stress patterns." Donovan snorted. 30 years in construction and I've never heard that mystical bullshit before. Different approaches yield different insights. "Yeah? And what insights has the morning sun granted you about my site?" Marcus considered sugarcoating his assessment, then decided against it. "Your foundation has critical deficiencies. The southwest quadrant is showing early signs of settling. The support columns for the atrium were poured with inconsistent concrete mixtures, and your steel framework doesn't match the blueprints I reviewed yesterday." Donovan's face darkened. "You've been here one day and you're telling me my foundation is failing? Who the hell do you think you are?" "I'm simply reporting observations. The mathematical load distribution." "Save the technical jargon," Donovan interrupted. "This building passed every inspection. If there were problems, the city inspectors would have flagged them. Inspectors verify code compliance, not optimal structural integrity," Marcus explained. "They ensure minimum standards are met, not maximum stability." Donovan stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Listen carefully, Chen. I've built 17 major structures in this city. Not one has ever had a structural issue. So either every building inspector in the county is incompetent, or you're seeing problems that don't exist. There's a third possibility," Marcus said quietly. "The problems exist, but previous inspections missed them because they're still developing. Concrete degradation accelerates exponentially once it begins." For a moment, genuine concern flickered across Donovan's face before hardening back into defensive anger. "Get me proof, not theories. Until then, stop spooking my crew with doom predictions." As Donovan stalked away, Marcus returned to his inspection. He knew the pattern well: denial, anger, then grudging acknowledgement once the evidence became irrefutable. Unfortunately, by then, The solutions would be more expensive and time-consuming. Back in the office trailer, Marcus spread out the official blueprints beside his notes. The discrepancies were significant. The executed construction deviated from the approved plans in multiple critical areas, either through carelessness or deliberate corner-cutting. The office gradually filled with project managers, engineers, and administrative staff. Marcus noted how they clustered around Donovan's desk, occasionally glancing his way with undisguised suspicion. Mid-morning, Janice approached his desk. "Meeting in 10 minutes. Donovan wants you there." She hesitated, then added in a lower voice, "He's put you next to the HVAC equipment. If you want to actually hear anything, sit on the opposite side." Marcus thanked her with genuine surprise, a small act of kindness amidst the hostility. The conference room was really just a partitioned section of the trailer, with a long table surrounded by mismatched chairs. As predicted, Donovan had placed a chair for him directly beside the rattling air handler unit that served the trailer. Instead, Marcus selected a seat across the table. Donovan entered with his lieutenants and frowned at Marcus's position but said nothing. "Weekly progress review," he announced. "Let's make it quick. Roy, where are we on the East Wing?" The meeting proceeded efficiently despite the undercurrent of tension. Marcus listened carefully, building a mental map of the project's status. The issues were worse than he'd initially suspected. Supplier delays were real, but they masked deeper problems with project management and execution. When it came time for department updates, a young engineer named Zoe Santos presented the electrical installation progress. Unlike the others, she made consistent eye contact with Marcus, including him in her explanation rather than performing solely for Donovan. "Mr. Chen," Donovan suddenly said, "since corporate sent you to fix our problems, perhaps you'd like to share your wisdom with the team." The room fell silent. A trap, clearly. Criticize the project too harshly and he'd lose any chance of cooperation. Say nothing substantive and he'd appear ineffectual. "I've only been here a day," Marcus began, "so my observations are preliminary. However, I see 3 immediate concerns and several potential opportunities for improvement." He outlined the foundation issues first, then the material quality inconsistencies, and finally the scheduling inefficiencies, all framed as challenges to overcome rather than failures to condemn. "If I may," he concluded, "I'd like to propose some alternative approaches to the atrium support structure that could recover some of the schedule delays while addressing the foundation concerns." Donovan leaned back, arms crossed. "And these magical solutions, they'd require ripping out work we've already done?" "Some portions, yes. But the cost of remediation now would be substantially less than addressing structural failures later." "Theoretical failures," Donovan corrected. "Based on your one-day assessment, I can provide detailed analysis if—" "Email it to me." Donovan cut him off, already standing. "I'll review it when I have time." Meeting adjourned. As the room emptied, Marcus gathered his notes. He felt someone approach and looked up to find Zoe Santos waiting. "Your assessment about the foundation settling. Can you show me what indicators you're seeing?" she asked. "I've had concerns about the southwest corner, but I couldn't get traction with the senior engineers." Marcus studied her for a moment. Early 30s, competent, with intelligent eyes that held neither mockery nor blind deference. "I'd be happy to," he replied. "If you have time this afternoon." "Lunch break," she suggested. "Meet at the southwest pillar at noon." Marcus nodded, surprised by the offer of alliance. As she turned to leave, she paused. "Fair warning, Mr. Chen. Donovan doesn't just dislike outside consultants, he actively undermines them. The last 3 corporate sent didn't last 2 weeks. What happened to them? Equipment failures, missing reports, schedule mix-ups that made them look incompetent." She shrugged. "Nothing that could be proven, but enough to drive them out." "Thank you for the warning. Don't mention it, literally don't. I need this job." With that, she was gone. Marcus returned to his desk to find his chair mysteriously missing, a small, petty act of harassment. He borrowed one from an empty cubicle and continued his analysis. By mid-afternoon, the trailer had become stifling hot, the air conditioning mysteriously malfunctioning in his section only. Marcus worked through the discomfort, developing alternative designs that would address the structural issues while minimizing rework. At 4 o'clock, Donovan stopped by his desk. "Got a request from corporate. They want your preliminary assessment by tomorrow morning. I was told I had a week to—" "Plans changed," Donovan interrupted with obvious satisfaction. "Needed in their inbox by 8 a.m. With full technical documentation. An impossible deadline, deliberately so." "I'll do my best," Marcus said calmly. "You do that." Donovan started to walk away, then turned back. Oh, and the network goes down for maintenance at 6, in case you were planning to work late. After Donovan left, Marcus checked his email. No message from corporate about an accelerated timeline. A fabrication, then. One of the accidents Zoe had warned about. He gathered his materials and headed for the exit. Giving up already? Roy called after him. Adapting to circumstances. Marcus replied with a small smile. Instead of heading to his hotel, Marcus drove to a nearby copy shop where he spent the evening scanning blueprints, printing analysis reports, and preparing his preliminary assessment. When the shop closed at 10 p.m., he continued working from his hotel room, fueled by room service coffee and decades of professional determination. By 2 a.m., his eyes burned from strain, but the report was complete, comprehensive, meticulously documented, and irrefutable in its conclusions. The Henderson project had fundamental structural flaws that would lead to catastrophic failure if not addressed. Before trying to sleep, he called Mei Lin, forgetting the time difference. "Dad?" Her voice was thick with sleep. "Everything okay? I'm sorry to wake you," he said. "I just wanted to hear your voice." A pause. "Is it bad this time?" "The usual," he sighed. "But the building. It needs help, Mei Lin. And you're the only one who can save it?" He smiled at her gentle teasing. "There are other capable architects, but none as stubborn," she finished. "Get some sleep, Dad. Beat them with brilliance, not exhaustion." After they hung up, Marcus lay in the dark hotel room, mind still racing with calculations and design alternatives. The Henderson project was more than a building to him now. It had become a test, not just of his engineering acumen, but of his resilience against the familiar prejudice that had dogged his entire career. One more battle in a war he'd been fighting since the day his hearing began to fail. Marcus arrived at the site the next morning at 7:30, preliminary report in hand. Despite less than 4 hours of sleep, his mind was clear, focused on the day ahead. He'd faced worse conditions on projects across Asia and the Middle East. 14-hour days. In Dubai's summer heat. Monsoon season in Malaysia, political unrest in Bangkok. A hostile foreman in an air-conditioned trailer was barely a footnote in comparison. He found Janice already at her desk, the office otherwise empty. "You're here early," she remarked, glancing up from her computer. "I have a report for corporate," Marcus explained. "Apparently due this morning." Janice frowned. "That's odd. I handle all the corporate communications scheduling. There's nothing on the calendar about an urgent report." Just as he'd suspected. "Nevertheless, I've prepared one. Could you help me ensure it gets to the right people?" She hesitated. Loyalty to Donovan visibly warring with professional ethics. Ethics 1. "Give it to me. I'll send it through the proper channels." "Thank you," Marcus said, handing her the bound document and a USB drive. "If possible, I'd appreciate confirmation when it's received." "Of course." She took the materials, then lowered her voice. "Mr. Chen, be careful with Donovan. He doesn't like being shown up, especially by outsiders." "I'm not trying to show anyone up," Marcus replied. "I'm trying to prevent a potential structural failure. Intent doesn't matter to Donovan. Results do. And if your results make him look bad," she trailed off, implications clear. Marcus nodded his understanding and returned to his desk. For the next hour, he worked on refining his alternative design concepts, using a specialized notation system he'd developed over decades of solving seemingly impossible architectural problems. The system had begun as necessity, early in his career, as standard architectural notations proved inadequate for the complex structural challenges he faced. Marcus had incorporated elements from his Chinese heritage, the flowing precision of calligraphy combined with mathematical expressions and traditional engineering symbols. The result was a unique visual language that few could read but which had never failed him. As he drew, memories of Hong Kong surfaced. His first mentor, Master Liang, watching over his shoulder as he struggled with a particularly challenging, cantilevered design. "You think too much like an engineer," the old man had said, taking the pencil from Marcus's hand. "Look at the building as music frozen in time. Each beam a note, each support a harmony." When Liang sketched his solution, the lines seemed to dance across the page, creating patterns that transcended standard architectural notation. That night, the young Marcus had begun developing his own system, blending Western technical precision with Eastern artistic fluidity. The office gradually filled with staff, their curious glances at his intricate drawings giving way to dismissive shrugs when they couldn't decipher the notation. By mid-morning, Donovan arrived making a beeline for Marcus's desk. Where's that report? He demanded without preamble. With Janice. Marcus replied calmly. She's sending it to corporate. Donovan's expression darkened. I told you to give it to me for review first. You said corporate needed it by 8 a.m. There wasn't time for an additional review cycle. For a moment, Donovan seemed ready to explode. Then, noticing the attention from nearby staff, he forced a tight smile. Next time, follow proper channels. What are you working on now? Marcus indicated his drawings. Alternative structural solutions. For the atrium support, Donovan glanced at the intricate patterns of lines, symbols, and Chinese characters. His brow furrowed. What the hell is this? Some kind of code? It's a specialized notation system I've developed over the years. We use standard architectural drawings here, Donovan said flatly. Not whatever this is, of course. These are preliminary conceptual sketches. Final designs would be converted to standard notation. Donovan studied the drawings a moment longer, unable to hide his confusion at the unfamiliar symbology. Have something I can actually understand on my desk by end of day. And Chen, make sure it adheres to the original project parameters. We're not rebuilding from scratch. After Donovan left, Marcus continued refining his designs. The specialized notation allowed him to work through complex structural relationships more efficiently than standard methods, identifying solutions invisible to conventional approaches. At noon, he met Zoe at the southwest pillar as planned. She arrived with a tablet and laser measuring tool, ready for serious analysis. Show me what you're seeing, she said without preamble. Marcus pointed to hairline fractures near the base of the pillar. These indicate uneven settling. The foundation wasn't properly prepared for the soil conditions. Zoe crouched for a closer look. I flagged these 2 months ago. Donovan said they were cosmetic. They're not. They're symptomatic of a deeper issue. Marcus traced his finger along the concrete. The entire southwest section is settling at a different rate than the rest of the structure. Eventually, this will create shearing forces that the current design can't accommodate. She took measurements, frowning at the results. You're right. There's already a 1.2 centimeter differential from the northwest corner. The problem will compound with each additional floor. Can it be fixed without starting over? Marcus nodded. With proper reinforcement and load redistribution. I'm working on a design modification that would address it while maintaining the project timeline. Using that special notation system I saw on your desk. When he looked surprised, she added, I notice things. Engineering habit, yes. It allows me to visualize structural relationships more intuitively. Could you teach me? The question caught him off guard. It's taken decades to develop. It's not something that can be learned quickly. I'm a fast learner, she countered. And having someone else who can read your designs might be useful, considering, she gestured vaguely toward the main office, where Donovan held court. A fair point. We could start with the basics, Marcus conceded. Great. She glanced at her watch. Break's almost over. Same time tomorrow? After she left, Marcus continued his inspection, cataloging additional structural concerns. The more he examined, the more certain he became. Without intervention, the Henderson project was heading for disaster. Not immediate collapse, but expensive, potentially dangerous failures within 5 to 10 years of completion. Back at his desk, Marcus found his specialized pens missing, another petty act of sabotage. He retrieved spares from his car and resumed work, translating his morning concepts into standard architectural drawings as Donovan had demanded. The afternoon crawled by under the constant drone of the malfunctioning air conditioner. Marcus noticed how Donovan had positioned his own desk for optimal sightlines to monitor him, how conversations quieted when he approached the break room, how documents he requested were mysteriously delayed or incomplete. By 6, most staff had departed. Marcus remained, finalizing his standard drawings for Donovan while continuing his specialized designs on separate paper. The quiet office allowed him to work without interruption, his mind fully engaged with the structural puzzle before him. At 8, the janitor arrived, an older man with a weathered face who nodded respectfully at Marcus before beginning his rounds. You work late, the man observed in heavily accented English. Some problems require extra time, Marcus replied. The janitor nodded as if this explained everything. My father was builder in Mexico. He say, the building speaks to those who listen. Marcus smiled at the unexpected wisdom. Your father was right, this building. The janitor continued, gesturing toward the window where the half-finished structure loomed in the darkness. It is speaking, but not everyone hears. What is it saying to you? Marcus asked, curious. The janitor shrugged. That corners were cut. That money was more important than strength. He tapped his temple. I have no fancy degree, but I see things. The concrete cracks too soon. The steel doesn't sit right. Marcus studied the man with newfound respect. You have a good eye. 20 years cleaning construction sites, you learn. He hesitated, then added, be careful with Donovan. He does not like people who see the truth. You're the third person to warn me about him. Then maybe you should listen, eh? With a knowing smile, the janitor continued his rounds. Marcus worked for another hour, then gathered his materials. He left the standard drawings on Donovan's desk as requested, but took his specialized designs with him. Some battles weren't worth fighting. Others required careful preparation. In his hotel room, Marcus spread his specialized drawings across the bed, seeing patterns and possibilities invisible to conventional analysis. The solution was taking shape, an elegant reconfiguration of the load-bearing elements that would address the foundation issues while minimizing disruption to the existing structure. His phone rang. Mei Lin calling for their daily check-in. How's the project from hell? She asked by way of greeting. Challenging but not impossible, he replied, smiling at her directness. The building can be saved. And the dinosaur Foreman? Less salvageable. Her laugh warmed him. Dad, I got my clinical rotation assignment. Pediatric oncology at Mass General. That's wonderful, he said, pride swelling in his chest. Your mother would be so proud. It's going to be tough, but it's what I want. She paused. The tuition installment is due next month. I'll have it, he assured her. This project pays well, only if you last longer than 2 weeks, she reminded him. Those other consultants didn't. I'm more persistent than most. Stubbornness is the Chen family legacy, she agreed. Just be careful, Dad. Some battles aren't worth the scars. After they hung up, Marcus returned to his drawings. Mei Lin was right about the risks, but some battles transcended personal considerations. The Henderson project wasn't just about proving himself. It was about ensuring the safety of everyone who would eventually occupy that building. He worked into the night, the specialized notation flowing from his pen like a visual symphony. Master Liang had been right all those years ago. Architecture wasn't just engineering. It was music frozen in time, harmony captured in concrete and steel, and Marcus could hear the discordant notes in the Henderson project, the structural dissonance that threatened its integrity. Now he needed to compose a solution that would bring it back into harmony and convince a hostile foreman to listen to the music he couldn't hear. The next morning, Marcus found his standard drawings returned to. His desk red marker slashed across every page with a single word scrawled in the margin. Rejected. Donovan didn't bother with subtlety. He strode to Marcus's desk, flanked by Roy and 2 senior engineers Marcus recognized from the project meeting. Your redesigns would put us another month behind schedule, Donovan announced, loud enough for the entire office to hear. Corporate sent you to solve problems, not create new ones. Marcus remained seated, refusing to be physically intimidated. The redesigns would add 3 weeks to the current phase but save 2 months in later stages. The net result is a more structurally sound building delivered ahead of your current projected completion date. According to your calculations, Donovan countered. My engineers disagree. The engineers shifted uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact. Coerced consensus, then. Perhaps we could discuss the technical specifics, Marcus began. We're done discussing. Donovan cut him off. Corporate called this morning. They want a progress update from both of us. Meeting at the Southeast Foundation. 1 hour. The abrupt announcement caught Marcus off guard. I wasn't informed of any meeting. You just were, Donovan replied with a smirk. 1 hour. Don't be late. After they left, Marcus checked his email. Nothing from corporate. He tried calling his contact in the head office, but the call went straight to voicemail. Another of Donovan's manipulations, almost certainly. Zoe appeared at his desk, concern evident in her expression. I heard. The Southeast Foundation is the noisiest part of the site right now. They're running pile drivers and concrete pumps simultaneously. The implication was clear. Donovan had deliberately chosen the location to maximize Marcus's hearing. Difficulties. Thank you for the warning, Marcus said. Want some advice? Bring written materials. When you can't hear the questions, you can at least control the information flow. Marcus nodded, grateful for the alliance, however tenuous. An hour later, Marcus arrived at the Southeast Foundation equipped with printed copies of his analysis and a digital tablet containing his complete findings. The area was exactly as Zoe had described, a cacophony of construction noise that made normal conversation nearly impossible. pile drivers pounded rhythmically, drowning out even the shouts of workers standing feet apart. Donovan was already there with Roy, along with two men in suits whom Marcus didn't recognize. The foreman's expression betrayed momentary surprise at Marcus's preparedness. Marcus Chen, he introduced himself to the suits, raising his voice to be heard over the machinery. Architectural consultant, Jim Pearson, regional director, the older man replied. This is David Wells, project oversight. Corporate representatives then, but not the executives Marcus had been communicating with. Lower-level managers, possibly friends of Donovan's. We were just discussing the foundation concerns you raised, Pearson shouted over the noise. Donovan has a different assessment. I've prepared a detailed analysis, Marcus replied, offering the printed materials. Perhaps we could move somewhere quieter to discuss? We need to see the actual site. Donovan insisted, making no move to relocate. Tell them your concerns right, here where we can verify them firsthand. A deliberate setup. In this noise, Marcus would struggle to hear questions and make his case effectively. His hearing aid was picking up every mechanical sound, making speech nearly indecipherable. The primary issue, Marcus began, raising his voice to maximum volume, is differential settlement between the southwest and northeast quadrants. This will create structural shearing as the building rises. What evidence do you have? Wells asked, his words barely audible over a sudden increase in the pile driver's tempo. Marcus pointed to his report, but Donovan interjected before he could elaborate. Chen's been here less than a week, the foreman said, positioning himself to speak directly into Wells's ear. He's making catastrophic predictions based on hairline surface cracks that our team already documented as cosmetic. They're not cosmetic, Marcus countered, struggling to hear his own voice over the construction din. The measurement differentials clearly indicate. Speak up, Donovan interrupted. They can't hear you. Marcus tried again, louder, pointing to specific sections of his report, but each time he gained momentum, Donovan would interrupt with a technical question that Marcus couldn't fully hear, making his responses seem hesitant and uncertain. After 15 excruciating minutes, Pearson checked his watch. We need to get back. From what I can see, these concerns seem speculative at best. Donovan's team has been monitoring these minor issues already. If you'd just review the full analysis, Marcus tried again. Email it to us, Wells said dismissively. For now, we need this project back on schedule. No more delays for theoretical problems. The corporate men shook hands with Donovan and departed, barely acknowledging Marcus. The foreman remained, triumph evident in his stance. Tough break, he said with mock sympathy. Maybe next time request a meeting room with better acoustics. Marcus met his gaze steadily. This was deliberately orchestrated. Paranoid, aren't we? Donovan chuckled. Not everything revolves around your disability. The word hung in the air between them, finally spoken aloud. My hearing impairment doesn't affect my architectural expertise, Marcus said evenly. The building's flaws remain regardless of your theatrics. Donovan stepped closer. Let me make something clear. This is my site, my project. You're here because corporate has some diversity quota to fill. In 2 weeks, you'll be gone, and this building will continue exactly as I've planned it. Even if that means eventual structural failure, there won't be any failure. But if there was, it would happen long after the warranty period expires. Donovan shrugged. Not my problem. He walked away, leaving Marcus alone amidst the mechanical cacophony. Back in the office trailer, Marcus found his desk had been relocated, now wedged directly beside the loudest printer in the office. His specialized pens were missing again, and his computer password had mysteriously reset. Small petty harassments designed to wear him down, to make him quit. Marcus sat at his diminished workspace, anger and determination warring within him. The building deserved better. The people who would eventually occupy it deserved better. And despite Donovan's machinations, Marcus wasn't going anywhere. The site emptied as evening fell, lights clicking off one by one throughout the trailer. Marcus remained at his compromised desk, waiting. By 8 o'clock, only the night security guard remained, making his hourly rounds. Working late again, Mr. Chen? The guard asked, pausing at the door. Just finishing some calculations, Marcus replied. Don't stay too long, nothing worth losing sleep over. If only that were true. Marcus watched the guard continue his patrol, then gathered his materials. Not to leave, but to relocate. He'd noticed an unused storage room at the far end of the trailer complex, away from the main offices. A forgotten space filled with outdated equipment and archived project files. perfect for what he needed to do. The room was dusty but quiet, blissfully quiet after the manufactured noise pollution of his assigned workspace. Marcus cleared a drafting table, arranged his specialized pens in precise order, and unrolled a large sheet of architectural paper. He adjusted his hearing aid to its lowest setting, allowing the world to recede until only the whisper of pen against paper remained. Then he began to draw. The first lines flowed like water, graceful arcs establishing the building's basic structure. Next came the foundational elements, rendered in his unique notational system, where traditional engineering symbols merged with Chinese calligraphy and mathematical expressions, a visual language built over decades of solving architectural puzzles around the world. Master Liang's voice echoed in his memory. Architecture is mathematics made visible, music rendered in steel and stone. Marcus worked methodically, moving from macro concepts to micro details. Each line precise, each symbol imbued with layers of meaning indecipherable to untrained eyes but crystal clear to his own. Hours passed unnoticed as the alternative design took shape. Not a cosmetic modification of Donovan's flawed original, but a fundamental reimagining that preserved the building's intended appearance while completely restructuring its internal support systems. The solution was elegant in its simplicity, a redistributed load path that accommodated the foundation's differential settlement, while actually reducing material costs by 14%. The redesigned atrium support eliminated the need for 4 massive columns, creating more usable space. The modified steel framework required fewer custom pieces, addressing the supply chain delays that had plagued the project. By midnight, the primary structural drawings were complete. Marcus stretched, back aching from hours hunched over the drafting table. He'd missed dinner. His body reminded him with a hollow grumble. Too late for anything but the vending machine down the hall. As he searched his pockets for change, his phone vibrated. A text from Mei Lin. "Don't forget to eat something. Love you." He smiled. Even half a continent away, his daughter knew his habits too well. Fortified by a stale sandwich and coffee from the ancient machine, Marcus returned to his hidden workspace. The structural redesign was only the beginning. Now came the documentation, the proof, the irrefutable mathematical evidence that would force even Donovan to acknowledge the superiority of his solution. Marcus adjusted his hearing aid again and resumed work. The calculations flowed through him like a current, each equation building on the last, creating a framework as solid as the building itself. Structural load analyses, stress distribution models, material cost comparisons, revised construction timelines, all rendered with mathematical precision and architectural vision. By 3 a.m., his eyes burned from concentration, but the work continued. This was the rhythm he'd known his entire career, the deep, meditative flow of creation that transcended physical discomfort, the zone where disability disappeared and only the problem and its solution existed. At 4:30 a.m., he completed the final technical appendix. The comprehensive redesign package included full structural reimagining using his specialized notation, translated standard architectural drawings for construction implementation, detailed cost-benefit analysis showing $12 million in savings revised, construction timeline reducing overall completion by 8 weeks, material substitution options to address supply chain issues, phased implementation plan to minimize disruption to existing work. Marcus gathered the documents, carefully placing them in his leather portfolio. Dawn was still an hour away. He could return to his hotel, shower, change, and be back before Donovan arrived. As he prepared to leave, a noise in the corridor froze him in place. Footsteps. The night guard wasn't due for another 20 minutes. Marcus remained perfectly still, listening. The steps paused outside the storage room door, then continued past. When silence returned, he gathered his materials and slipped out. The main office was still dark. The first workers not due for another 2 hours. Marcus placed his comprehensive redesign package in his car, keeping only the executive summary and key visualization drawings to present at the morning meeting. On the drive to his hotel, Marcus rehearsed his approach. Donovan would resist. That was certain. The foreman had too much pride invested in the original design to readily accept a superior alternative. But the mathematics were irrefutable. The cost savings alone would compel corporate attention, regardless of Donovan's objections. In his hotel room, Marcus showered quickly, the hot water washing away the physical fatigue, but leaving his mind sharp, focused on the confrontation to come. As he dressed, selecting his most formal suit, he considered the stakes. This wasn't just about proving Donovan wrong. It wasn't even about saving a building from future structural failure. It was about standing firm against the same prejudice and dismissal he'd faced throughout his career. The automatic assumption that his hearing impairment somehow diminished his professional capabilities. Marcus Chen had spent 30 years proving that assumption wrong, one building at a time. The Henderson project would be no different. He adjusted his tie, checked his hearing aid, and gathered his presentation materials. It was time to reveal what he'd created in the night's quiet hours, a solution so elegant, so mathematically perfect, that not even Blake Donovan could dismiss it. The morning briefing was scheduled for 8:30 in the main conference room. Marcus arrived at 7:45, finding the office still mostly empty. He used the time to prepare, arranging his presentation materials in precise order, and checking that the projector was functional. Years of experience had taught him to control every variable possible before major presentations. Zoe arrived at 8:10, surprise registering on her face when she saw him. "You look different," she observed. Marcus smiled slightly. "Professional. Armor." She nodded in understanding. "Rumor is that actual corporate executives are calling in today, not just Donovan's friends from regional." "Good," Marcus replied. "The more decision makers present, the better." "For what it's worth," Zoe said quietly, "some of us are hoping you succeed. This building deserves better than what it's getting." Before Marcus could respond, Donovan burst through the door, followed by his usual entourage. The foreman stopped short at the sight of Marcus, eyes narrowing at his formal attire and prepared presentation materials. "Planning something special, Chen?" Donovan asked, suspicion evident in his tone. "I have an alternative proposal to present," Marcus replied calmly, given yesterday's concerns about delays and costs. Donovan's jaw tightened. "The meeting agenda is already set." "There's no time for—" "Actually," Janice interrupted from the doorway. "Mr. Abernathy from corporate specifically requested that Mr. Chen be given time to present his findings." Donovan's expression darkened further. "Abernathy? He wasn't scheduled to join today. He called this morning," Janice explained. "He and Ms. Winters will be on the video conference." The names clearly held significance. Donovan's demeanor shifted instantly from dismissive to concerned. "Fine. Chen can have 10 minutes after the main agenda items." As the room filled with project managers and engineers, Marcus observed the power dynamics at play. Donovan huddled with his core team, speaking in low tones and casting occasional glances his way. Others maintained careful neutrality, awaiting signals about which way the political winds would blow. At 8:30 precisely, Janice connected the video call. Two executives appeared on screen, a silver-haired man with piercing eyes and a younger woman whose composed expression suggested she missed nothing. "Good morning, Henderson team," the man began. "Richard Abernathy, Chief Operations Officer. This is Victoria Winters, our General Counsel." The atmosphere in the room shifted immediately. Not mid-level managers, but C-suite executives. Donovan's expression betrayed momentary panic before he composed himself. "We've been reviewing the preliminary report submitted by Marcus Chen," Abernathy continued. "Given the concerns raised, we thought it prudent to join today's briefing." Donovan cleared his throat. "Of course, we welcome your participation. We were just about to begin our regular progress update." "Before you do," Winters interjected, "we'd like to hear from Mr. Chen directly." Donovan's forced smile faltered. "We had planned to address his concerns later in the— Now would be preferable," Abernathy stated flatly. All eyes turned to Marcus. He rose calmly, connecting his tablet to the projector. "Thank you for the opportunity," he began. "I'll be brief, but comprehensive." With practiced efficiency, Marcus outlined the structural issues he'd identified. Supported by photographic evidence and measurement data, he presented the differential settlement analysis, the concrete mixture inconsistencies, and the load distribution problems, all explained in clear, accessible language that neither talked down to the executives nor lost them in technical jargon. Then came the solution. "Rather than simply patching the existing problems," Marcus explained, "I've developed a comprehensive redesign that addresses the root causes while actually improving the project timeline and budget." He displayed the first visualization, a side-by-side comparison of the current design and his alternative. The conference room fell silent as the elegance of the solution became apparent even to non-technical observers. The modified support structure reduces material costs by eliminating redundant elements, Marcus continued, advancing to the next slide. The reconfigured load paths accommodate the existing foundation settlement while preventing future structural stress. Donovan finally found his voice. This is completely impractical. The redesign would require tearing out weeks of work. Actually, no, Marcus countered, displaying his phased implementation plan. The transition can occur with minimal disruption to completed sections. I've mapped the process in detail, including temporary support requirements during the transition phase. He moved methodically through the presentation, addressing each potential objection before it could be raised. The cost savings, the accelerated timeline, the improved spatial efficiency, the reduced maintenance requirements over the building's lifetime. As he concluded, Marcus unrolled his hand-drawn master plan across the conference table. The intricate, specialized notation covering the large sheet like a work of art. This is the complete structural redesign, he said quietly. Every element mathematically optimized, every connection precisely calculated. Donovan stared at the drawing, confusion and anger warring on his face. What is this supposed to be? No one can read this chicken scratch. I can read it, Marcus replied, and I can translate it into standard architectural drawings for implementation. Abernathy leaned forward on the video feed. The savings projections, $12 million in 8 weeks. Can you guarantee those figures? With proper implementation, yes. Donovan slammed his hand on the table. This is theoretical nonsense. He's been here a week and thinks he can redesign a project we've been working on. For a year? Mr. Donovan, Winters said coolly, given the potential savings, I'd think you'd be more interested in exploring this option rather than dismissing it outright. I would be, Donovan snapped, if I could even understand what he's proposing. Look at this. He jabbed a finger at Marcus's specialized notation. This isn't architecture, it's hieroglyphics. It's actually a synthesis of traditional architectural notation, mathematical expressions, and Chinese calligraphic principles, Marcus explained calmly. Developed over 30 years of solving complex structural problems. Fascinating, Abernathy said, and clearly effective, judging by the results. He turned to Winters, who nodded slightly. Mr. Chen, we'd like you to lead a dedicated team to develop this redesign for full implementation review. Donovan's face went pale. Sir, with all due respect, the decision is made, Blake, Abernathy cut him off. The potential savings are too significant to ignore. Mr. Chen will report directly to corporate on this initiative, with full access to whatever resources he requires. As the meeting concluded and the video feed disconnected, the room buzzed, with stunned whispers. Donovan stood frozen, his authority publicly undermined, his expertise questioned. Marcus gathered his materials quietly, neither celebrating nor acknowledging the tension. The real work was just beginning. The aftermath of the morning meeting rippled through the Henderson site like a seismic event. By lunchtime, everyone from engineers to laborers had heard some version of what transpired. Marcus noticed the shift immediately. Sidelong glances, now tinged with curiosity rather than dismissal, hushed conversations that paused when he approached only to resume with greater intensity after he passed. Janice appeared at his desk mid-afternoon with official corporate paperwork. They've authorized a dedicated workspace for your team, she informed him, handing over a keycard. The modular office at the north end of the site. It was meant for client meetings, but Mr. Abernathy reassigned it. Thank you, Marcus replied, taking the card. Has the team been defined yet? You have authority to select personnel as needed, she explained. Though I should warn you, Donovan is already discouraging people from volunteering. Marcus nodded, unsurprised. Politics are inevitable on projects of this scale. This is beyond politics, Janice said, lowering her voice. Donovan's been here 18 years. He's never been overruled like this. He's taking it personally. The building's integrity isn't a personal matter, Marcus observed. To Donovan, everything is personal. She glanced toward the foreman's empty desk. He's been in closed-door meetings with his lieutenants all afternoon, planning something. Thank you for the warning. After Janice left, Marcus gathered his materials and headed for his newly assigned workspace. The modular office was a significant upgrade. Spacious, well-lit, with multiple drafting tables and a dedicated conference area. Large windows overlooked the construction site, providing constant visual reference to the physical structure taking shape. He had just finished arranging his equipment when Zoe appeared in the doorway. So this is where the rebellion will be headquartered, she said with a half-smile. Is that what they're calling it? Among other things. She stepped inside, examining the space. Donovan's calling it Chen's folly and predicting catastrophic failure if your redesign is implemented. Expected, Marcus replied, continuing to organize his workspace. Are you here as an observer or a participant? That depends, she countered. Are you actually taking volunteers or was that corporate theater? Marcus paused, studying her carefully. I need competent engineers who care more about the building than office politics. The work will be demanding, the resistance substantial, and Donovan will likely hold grudges long after this project ends. So a career-limiting move, she summarized. Potentially. Zoe nodded thoughtfully. My father was a structural engineer for 30 years. His last project was a condo development in Miami. The developer pushed him to reduce costs by modifying the foundation design. He refused and was fired. 6 months later, they completed the building to the reduced specifications. She paused, her expression hardening. 3 years later, 38 people died when that building partially collapsed. My father never designed another building. The guilt destroyed him, even though he'd tried to prevent it. I'm sorry, Marcus said quietly. I didn't tell you that for sympathy, she replied. I told you because I know what structural compromise costs. Not just money, not just time, lives. She straightened her shoulders. So yes, I'm volunteering. Marcus nodded once. I'll need you to familiarize yourself with these, he said, indicating his specialized notational drawings. The learning curve is steep. I started studying them already, she admitted, after I saw them on your desk last week. The integration of mathematical functions with spatial representation is elegant. Before Marcus could respond, 2 more engineers appeared at the door. Luis Menendez from the electrical team and Sarah Weaver from materials. Both looked nervous but determined. We heard you're assembling a team, Luis said without preamble. Donovan will make your lives difficult. Marcus warned them. Sarah shrugged. He already does, at least this way. It's for something worthwhile. By day's end, 7 staff members had volunteered, a small but skilled cross-functional team representing each major discipline. Marcus scheduled their first official meeting for 7 a.m. the next morning, before Donovan typically arrived. As the site emptied for the evening, Marcus remained in the new workspace, expanding his redesign documentation for his team's review. The focused solitude was interrupted by a sharp knock. He looked up to find Donovan standing in the doorway, face flushed with barely contained anger. Enjoying your victory, Chen? The foreman asked, voice dangerously quiet. This isn't about winning or losing, Marcus replied calmly. It's about correcting structural deficiencies. Donovan stepped inside, closing the door behind him. Let me tell you how this ends. Your fancy redesign will hit implementation roadblocks. Materials will be delayed. Specialized equipment will malfunction. Workers will make mistakes. Eventually, corporate will grow impatient with the lack of progress and revert to the original plan. That would be unfortunate for everyone involved, Marcus said, especially the building's future occupants. Save the righteous architect routine, Donovan sneered. I built my first structure when you were still drafting toilet stalls. This is my site, my project, my reputation, and the building's integrity is everyone's responsibility, Marcus countered, rising to face Donovan directly, including yours. For a moment, genuine conflict flickered in Donovan's eyes, professional pride warring with stubborn defensiveness. Then his expression hardened again. You've made your choice, he said flatly. Remember that when this all comes crashing down. After Donovan left, Marcus remained standing, processing the confrontation. The battle lines were clearly drawn now. What had begun as casual workplace discrimination had escalated into open warfare, and the Henderson building itself was the battleground. The resistance began subtly. A missing equipment order, delayed material deliveries, email system glitches that prevented Marcus from communicating with corporate, small, deniable disruptions designed to undermine progress without leaving evidence of deliberate sabotage. By the 3rd day, the pattern was unmistakable. Marcus arrived at the modular office to find their workspace had been accidentally locked overnight. The air conditioning shut down, leaving their carefully prepared design mock-ups warped from heat exposure. Maintenance issue, the apologetic security guard explained. Whole system had to reset. Marcus thanked him without comment. No point blaming the messenger. Inside, his small team worked to salvage the damaged materials. Zoe looked up as he entered, frustration evident in her expression. This was deliberate, she said, gesturing to the warped models. The system doesn't just reset without authorization. Document everything, Marcus instructed calmly. But don't escalate publicly. Not yet. We're already behind schedule. Luis pointed out. If this keeps happening, it will, Marcus acknowledged. We adapt and proceed. He'd faced worse obstacles in his career. Political interference on the Beijing project, death threats in Jakarta, actual structural collapse in Singapore. Compared to those challenges, Donovan's petty sabotage was merely an inconvenience. The team regrouped, recreating the damaged materials and implementing new security protocols. Marcus began keeping duplicate records off-site and instituted a buddy system for all critical tasks. No one worked alone, no single point of vulnerability. Meanwhile, the translation of Marcus's specialized notation into standard architectural drawings continued. Zoe proved remarkably adept at deciphering his system, grasping the underlying principles faster than anyone Marcus had ever taught. It's like learning a new language, she explained when he commented on her progress. The syntax follows consistent patterns once you understand the foundational logic. By the end of the week, they had completed the first phase of implementation drawings, ready for regulatory review and construction adaptation. Marcus scheduled a presentation for the following Monday, inviting both corporate leadership and local building authorities. The weekend brought no respite. Marcus spent Saturday at the site, documenting existing conditions and refining transition methodologies. Sunday was devoted to presentation preparation, anticipating and addressing potential objections. Throughout it all, his hearing aid remained a constant reminder of why this battle mattered beyond professional pride. It represented every time someone had underestimated him because of a perceived disability. Monday morning arrived with new complications. The presentation room had been double booked, the projector mysteriously malfunctioned, and half the invited officials received incorrect time information. Donovan was nowhere to be seen during the confusion, though his influence was evident in every disruption. Despite the obstacles, Marcus maintained his composure, calmly relocating the meeting to their modular office and proceeding with backup equipment. The corporate executives joined via video conference, their patience visibly strained by the delays. Technical difficulties, Marcus explained without elaboration or accusation. Thank you for your flexibility. The presentation itself went smoothly. Marcus outlined the redesign implementation in precise, accessible terms, supported by detailed models and cost projections. His team fielded technical questions with confidence, demonstrating the depth of their analysis. The building officials were particularly impressed by the foundation remediation approach. This addresses concerns we raised during initial permitting, the lead inspector noted. We'd actually flagged some of these issues, but they were dismissed as non-critical. A pointed comment that hung in the air, its implications clear to everyone familiar with the project history. As the meeting concluded, Richard Abernathy addressed the group from the video screen. Based on what we've seen today, corporate has decided to fully authorize the Chen redesign implementation. Effective immediately, this initiative has priority resource allocation. The announcement should have felt like victory. Instead, Marcus recognized it as merely the end of the beginning. The real challenges lay ahead, translating designs into physical reality on a site controlled by active opposition. His concerns proved prescient the very next day. When the team arrived at the modular office, they found it had been broken into overnight. Marcus's specialized drawings were missing, along with their digital backups. Security footage from that section of the site had mysteriously failed to record. This crosses a line, Zoe fumed as they surveyed the damage. We need to report this to corporate security. We will, Marcus assured her. But first, he opened his leather portfolio and removed a complete duplicate set of the stolen designs. You made copies, Luis observed with evident relief. Always, Marcus confirmed, and these aren't the only ones. He'd learned the hard way in Singapore, where critical designs had been destroyed in a mysterious fire just days before implementation. Since then, redundancy had been his standard practice. Multiple copies stored in multiple locations, updated daily. While the team reinstalled their digital systems, Marcus received an unexpected visitor, the janitor he'd spoken with during his first week. I see things, the older man said without preamble. Last night, after everyone left, Donovan and his assistant in your office taking papers, a hard drive. Did you report this? Marcus asked. The janitor shook his head. I need this job. But you are trying to make the building safe. My cousin died when a shopping mall collapsed. In Mexico City. Bad construction. He tapped his temple. I remember. Thank you for telling me, Marcus said. I understand your position. There is more. The janitor continued, voice lowered. They talk about changing things in the southwest section, tonight after second shift. Something about concrete pour modifications. A chill ran through Marcus. The southwest section was critical to the foundation remediation. Any unauthorized modifications could compromise the entire structural integrity. Can you show me exactly where? He asked. The janitor nodded and led Marcus to a site map on the wall, indicating a specific area where foundational supports were scheduled for reinforcement. After the janitor left, Marcus called an emergency team meeting. We need to implement continuous monitoring of all critical areas, he explained, outlining what he'd learned. If they're planning unauthorized modifications, that's criminal negligence, Sarah pointed out. Only if we can prove it, Marcus replied. And only if we catch it before it happens. They developed a rotation schedule, ensuring team members would be on site around the clock. Marcus took the first overnight shift himself, positioning himself with clear visibility of the southwest section, while appearing to work on unrelated documentation. Shortly after midnight, his vigilance was rewarded. Donovan arrived with Roy, and two workers Marcus didn't recognize. They huddled near the southwest supports examining blueprints by flashlight. Marcus activated the recording function on his tablet, capturing video as the men began removing temporary bracing from a critical support column. Even from a distance, the violation of safety protocols was evident. The column wasn't ready for brace removal according to both the original plans and Marcus's redesign. He faced a crucial decision: intervene immediately or gather more evidence of deliberate sabotage. The structural engineer in him couldn't risk the former, not with worker safety at stake. Marcus stepped from the shadows. That support isn't ready for debrace, he called out. The group startled, Donovan spinning to face him with undisguised fury. What the hell are you doing here, Chen? Preventing a serious safety violation, Marcus replied, approaching steadily. Those braces need to remain until the concrete cures fully. At least another 48 hours according to the specifications. We're accelerating the schedule, Donovan retorted. The concrete's solid enough. Testing results say otherwise, Marcus countered. This isn't about our redesign dispute. This is basic construction safety. The overnight confrontation transformed the project dynamic. Word spread quickly among the construction crews about Donovan's attempted safety violation. While his core loyalists remained steadfast, others began viewing Marcus's team with newfound respect. Architects who actually understood construction realities and prioritized worker safety. Marcus called an emergency meeting with his team the next morning, sharing the recorded evidence and outlining new security measures. From now on, we inspect everything twice, he instructed. No redesign implementation proceeds without verification that the preceding work meets specifications. This documentation should go to corporate, Zoe argued. Attempted sabotage crosses every professional line. Marcus considered the political implications. We'll document everything meticulously, but escalation now might only entrench the opposition. Let's focus on implementation success first. The team shifted focus to translating Marcus's specialized notation into construction-ready standard drawings, a formidable technical challenge. Each symbol in Marcus's system contained layers of information that required multiple conventional notations to express fully. It's like trying to translate poetry into technical manuals, Luis observed after struggling with a particularly complex section. The efficiency of your system is remarkable, but communicating it to conventional builders is exactly why standard notation exists, Marcus finished. My system works for conceptualization and problem solving. Implementation requires universal language. They established a translation methodology, with Zoe serving as the primary interpreter between Marcus's notational system and standard architectural drafting. Her natural affinity for the symbolic language continued to impress him. How did you develop this system? She asked during a late-night translation session. It's unlike anything I've ever seen. Marcus paused, memories surfacing. Necessity initially. In Hong Kong, my first major project involved structural challenges that standard notation couldn't adequately express. My mentor introduced me to calligraphic principles, how a single stroke could convey motion, tension, balance. But the mathematical elements? She prompted. Singapore, he replied, working with an MIT-trained engineer who approached architecture through pure mathematics. We developed a hybrid language that could express complex force relationships visually. And the hearing aid? Zoe asked hesitantly. Did that influence your approach? Marcus nodded, appreciating her directness. As my hearing deteriorated, I found myself thinking more visually. When you can't rely on one sense, others compensate. My visual processing became more acute, more pattern-oriented. Was it sudden? The hearing loss? An accident? In Singapore, Marcus rarely discussed this. Part of his history. A support column collapsed during inspection. I was checking foundation stability when it happened. The sound was... He paused, deafening, quite literally. I managed to warn 3 workers, but the acoustic trauma was permanent. I'm sorry, Zoe said quietly. It changed my approach, Marcus continued. Made me more meticulous, more attuned to structural whispers. A building speaks before it fails. Subtle cracks, minute settling, material stress. Most people don't listen until it's screaming. Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent call from Luis, who was inspecting the southwest quadrant. You need to see this, he reported. They've modified the concrete mix for the remediation pour, reduced the Portland ratio, and substituted substandard aggregate. Stop the pour, Marcus instructed. Site safety protocols and material verification requirements. Donovan's claiming the changes were approved by corporate materials management. Get documentation. If it doesn't exist, the pour doesn't happen. Another crisis, another confrontation. The pattern continued daily. Donovan finding new ways to undermine the redesign implementation, Marcus's team identifying and countering each attempt. The construction site had become a chess match with the building's integrity as the ultimate prize. Corporate grew increasingly impatient with the delays, demanding explanation for the constant revisions and inspections. Marcus documented everything meticulously, creating an irrefutable record of attempted compromises and safety violations. 3 weeks into implementation, Richard Abernathy scheduled an on-site visit, the first time corporate leadership would physically inspect the project since approving Marcus's redesign. The announcement sent ripples of tension through both camps. The night before Abernathy's arrival, Marcus worked late finalizing translation of the atrium support system, the most visually dramatic and structurally significant component of his redesign. His specialized notation filled 3 large sheets, the symbols flowing across the paper like a technical symphony. As he worked, memories of his daughter surfaced. Mei Lin, at 7 years old, watching him draft at their kitchen table, asking endless questions about how buildings stood up. It's like a puzzle, isn't it, Daddy? She'd observed with childish insight. All the pieces have to fit just right. Exactly. Right? He'd told her, guiding her small hand as she attempted to copy his notations. And every piece affects all the others. Change one, and everything changes. She'd understood intuitively what many engineers took years to grasp, the holistic nature of structural systems, the interconnectedness of every element. Marcus smiled at the memory, realizing he hadn't called Mei Lin in 3 days. Too focused. On the Henderson battle, he made a mental note to call her tomorrow after Abernathy's visit. Finishing the final translation sheet, Marcus gathered his materials and headed for the exit. The site was quiet. Most workers long gone. Only security lights illuminated the skeletal structure, casting dramatic shadows across the half-finished atrium. He paused, studying the building's silhouette against the night sky. Despite everything, the sabotage attempts, the resistance, the petty harassment, the Henderson project was evolving into something remarkable. The redesigned support structure was beginning to take physical form, its elegance evident even in the incomplete state. For a moment, Marcus allowed himself to feel genuine satisfaction. Whatever Donovan's machinations, the building itself was speaking a new language now. Marcus's language, translated into steel and concrete. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new confrontations. But tonight, in the quiet darkness, Marcus could see the finished structure already. Strong, balanced, harmonious, exactly as he had drawn it. Richard Abernathy's visit loomed like an approaching storm. Both Marcus and Donovan recognized it as a potential turning point. Corporate validation or repudiation of the redesign implementation. The evening before, Marcus gathered his team for final preparations. Abernathy will want visual evidence of improvement, he explained. Technical drawings won't suffice. The redesigned sections are still mostly structural, Zoe pointed out, not visually impressive to non-architects, which is why we need a model, Marcus replied. a physical representation showing both designs side by side, original and redesign, with structural stress points highlighted. Luis checked his watch. It's already 7 p.m. The presentation is at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Then we work through the night, Marcus said simply. No one protested. In 3 weeks, his small team had developed the cohesion of veterans, united by purpose and shared opposition. They understood the stakes. Marcus assigned tasks according to strengths. Sarah and Luis gathering materials, Zoe helping him with the core design, others handling documentation and presentation elements. By 8 p.m., they had converted their workspace into a model building studio. Drafting tables pushed together to create a central workspace. As they began constructing the miniature representation of the Henderson building, Marcus felt a familiar calm descend, the meditative flow of creation that had sustained him throughout his career. His hands moved with practiced precision, crafting structural elements to exact scale. Beside him, Zoe mirrored his movements, her engineering background evident in her meticulous attention to load-bearing elements. "My father used to build models like this," she commented. "He said you understand a building differently when you construct it with your hands." "Your father was wise," Marcus replied. "Physical modeling reveals relationships invisible in digital renderings." The night progressed, the model taking shape under their collective focus. Around midnight, as they completed the foundational elements, Marcus's phone vibrated with a text from Maylin. "Good luck tomorrow. Remember to breathe." He smiled, wondering how his daughter always seemed to know when he faced critical moments. She'd inherited her mother's intuition along with his stubborn determination. By 3 a.m., the comparative model was half complete. The original design on one side, Marcus's redesign on the other, with stressed structural points highlighted in red. The differences were striking even at this stage. Where Donovan's design showed multiple stress concentrations at foundation and support junctions, Marcus's redesign distributed loads evenly, eliminating potential failure points. "It's beautiful," Sarah observed, stepping back to view their progress. "Not just technically superior, actually elegant." "Form follows function," Marcus replied. "True structural integrity creates its own aesthetic." They worked steadily through the early morning hours, fueled by coffee and professional pride. At 6 a.m., Luis returned from a supply run with breakfast for everyone. At 7 a.m., they applied the final elements, transparent overlays showing stress distribution patterns across both designs. The completed model was revelatory. Even to untrained eyes, the superiority of Marcus's redesign was immediately apparent. Cleaner lines, more efficient support structures, balanced load distribution visualized through color gradients. The original design appeared clumsy and overbuilt by comparison, with redundant supports in non-critical areas while vital junctions showed dangerous stress concentrations. "Will Donovan have a counter-presentation?" Zoe asked as they cleaned up. "Almost certainly," Marcus confirmed, "and he'll have had more time and resources to prepare it. But not this," Luis said, gesturing to their model. "This speaks for itself." They took turns freshening up in the site facilities, changing into clean clothes they'd brought in anticipation of the all-nighter. By 8:30 a.m., their presentation space was immaculate, the model positioned for maximum impact, supporting documentation arranged for easy reference. At precisely 9 a.m., Richard Abernathy arrived, a commanding presence in an impeccable suit, flanked by 2 technical advisors. Donovan met him at the site entrance, immediately monopolizing his attention with a glossy presentation folder and practiced corporate charm. Marcus watched through the window as Donovan guided Abernathy toward the main conference room, away from the modular office where Marcus's team waited with their model. "He's diverting him," Zoe observed. "Typical, Mr. Chen." Janice appeared at the door, slightly breathless. "Mr. Abernathy is asking for you to join them in the main conference room." Marcus had anticipated this maneuver. "Please inform Mr. Abernathy that we've prepared a physical model demonstration that can't be easily relocated. We're happy to begin. Here and then proceed to Donovan's presentation." Janice looked uncomfortable but nodded. "I'll tell him." 10 minutes of tense waiting followed. Finally, the door opened and Abernathy entered, his expression neutral but evaluative. Behind him came his advisors, followed by a visibly irritated Donovan. "Mr. Chen," Abernathy began, "I understand you have something to show me that couldn't be moved to our scheduled location." "Yes, sir," Marcus replied, gesturing to the model. "A comparative structural analysis that demonstrates the key differences Between the original design and our redesign implementation, Abernathy approached the model, genuine interest replacing corporate neutrality. Impressive craftsmanship, he observed, leaning closer to examine the details. You built this overnight? My team did. Yes. Walk me through it. For the next 20 minutes, Marcus explained the structural modifications, highlighting stress, reduction points, material efficiencies, and implementation methodologies. Abernathy asked pointed technical questions, revealing an engineering background that Donovan had clearly underestimated. And these red indicators represent failure points in the original design? Abernathy asked, pointing to the stress concentrations. Potential failure points, Marcus clarified. Under normal conditions, they would likely hold, but under seismic stress or with substandard materials, these junctions become critical vulnerabilities. Donovan could no longer contain himself. This model exaggerates minor design differences for dramatic effect. Our original plans passed every code requirement and inspection. Minimum code compliance isn't the same as optimal structural integrity, Marcus countered. And this model uses the exact stress calculations from both designs scaled precisely. Abernathy studied the model silently for another moment, then straightened. I've seen enough here. Let's continue in the main conference room with Mr. Donovan's presentation. As they relocated, Marcus caught Zoe's eye. The first round had gone well, but Donovan would be prepared for the second. In the main conference room, Donovan had assembled an impressive array of materials, timeline projections, budget comparisons, and digitally rendered visualizations that presented his original design in the most favorable light possible. As you can see, Donovan explained, displaying before and after schedule projections. Chen's redesign has already added 4 weeks to our timeline, despite his promises of acceleration. Implementation delays caused by what factors? Abernathy asked. Donovan hesitated fractionally. Material verification requirements, excessive inspections, retraining personnel on modified techniques, not sabotage attempts, material substitutions, or safety violations? Marcus interjected quietly. The room temperature seemed to drop several degrees. Donovan's expression hardened. Those are unfounded accusations. Documented accusations, Marcus corrected. With photographic evidence and witness testimony, Abernathy looked between them, corporate diplomacy warring with evident concern. I think we need to review these allegations separately, he finally said. For now, let's focus on the technical comparisons. The meeting continued for another hour. Donovan highlighting costs while minimizing structural concerns, Marcus emphasizing long-term integrity while demonstrating eventual cost savings. Throughout, Abernathy remained inscrutable, asking occasional questions but revealing no preference. As the presentation concluded, Abernathy stood. Gentlemen, I appreciate the thoroughness from both sides. Mr. Chen, your model was particularly illuminating. Mr. Donovan, your budget concerns are duly noted. He paused, surveying the tension-filled room. I'll be reviewing all materials before making recommendations to the executive committee. In the meantime, implementation of the redesign will continue as authorized, a measured victory for Marcus, though far from decisive. As Abernathy departed, Donovan's glare promised continued resistance. The battle for the Henderson building was far from over. 3 days after Abernathy's visit, an email arrived that changed the project dynamic. The corporate executive committee had scheduled a full site inspection. Not just Richard Abernathy, but CEO Catherine Reynolds and 3 board members would personally evaluate the redesign implementation. The announcement sent shockwaves through both camps. Corporate executives rarely visited active construction sites except for groundbreaking ceremonies and ribbon cuttings. A mid-project inspection by the CEO signaled extraordinary circumstances. Donovan immediately launched into preparation mode, ordering a comprehensive site cleanup and accelerating visible progress on non-controversial sections. His team worked overtime hanging drywall, installing fixtures and painting completed areas, creating an illusion of rapid advancement. Marcus took a different approach, focusing on transparency and educational preparation. They're coming to evaluate structural integrity, not aesthetic completion, he reminded his team. We prepare accordingly. They developed a walking tour that would highlight critical structural improvements, with cutaway sections that revealed the redesigned support systems in action. Each station included before and after comparisons, material efficiency metrics, and safety enhancement documentation. The day before the executive visit, Marcus noticed a subtle shift in Donovan's behavior. The overt hostility had vanished. replaced by something more concerning. Forced collegiality. Looking forward to tomorrow, Donovan said, stopping by Marcus's workspace with an unconvincing smile. I think we should present a unified front to the executives. Show them how we've integrated your ideas into the overall project vision. Marcus studied him carefully. My redesign isn't an idea, Blake. It's a comprehensive structural overhaul that addresses fundamental flaws in the original design. Of course, Donovan agreed too readily. Poor choice of words. What I meant was, we should emphasize collaboration rather than conflict. The executives want solutions, not personality disputes. I agree completely, Marcus replied. The building's integrity is what matters. Exactly. Donovan's enthusiasm seemed artificial, so I was thinking we could do a joint presentation. I'd handle the project management aspects. You'd cover the technical details. The proposal set off warning signals. After weeks of sabotage and obstruction, Donovan's sudden interest in collaboration could only be strategic. I appreciate the offer, Marcus said carefully, but I think separate presentations provide greater clarity. You focus on your areas of expertise, I'll focus on mine. Disappointment flickered across Donovan's face before his forced smile returned. Have it your way. Just trying to maximize our collective impact. After he left, Zoe approached Marcus's desk. That was weird. That was tactical, Marcus corrected. He's planning something. What? I'm not sure yet. But he wouldn't suggest joint presentation unless he saw advantage in it. They discovered Donovan's strategy the next morning when the executives arrived. As introductions concluded in the main conference room, Donovan smoothly took control of the agenda. Before we begin the site tour, he announced, I'd like to give you an overview of how we've been implementing Marcus's design recommendations. The phrasing was deliberately misleading, suggesting that Marcus had provided advisory input rather than a comprehensive redesign that corporate had officially authorized. I've been mentoring Marcus through the practical realities of construction, Donovan continued, helping translate his theoretical concepts into workable solutions. Marcus watched the executives exchange glances, noting how Donovan was positioning himself as the senior authority despite the corporate mandate that had placed Marcus in charge of the redesign implementation. For example, Donovan continued, gesturing to a diagram, when Marcus suggested modifying the atrium supports, I helped refine the approach to maintain our schedule commitments. CEO Catherine Reynolds, a sharp-featured woman with penetrating eyes, interrupted. My understanding was that Mr. Chen developed a complete structural redesign that we authorized for full implementation. Is that incorrect? Donovan barely hesitated. Not at all. I'm simply explaining how we've been collaborating to integrate his theoretical approach with practical construction methodologies. Perhaps Mr. Chen could clarify his role, Reynolds suggested, turning to Marcus. The room's attention shifted. Marcus rose calmly. Years of architectural presentations before demanding clients having prepared him for such moments. Thank you, Ms. Reynolds. To clarify, corporate authorized a comprehensive structural redesign that I developed to address critical flaws in the original plans. This isn't a set of recommendations or theoretical concepts. It's a complete restructuring of the building's core support systems, load distribution pathways, and foundation remediation. He gestured to the diagrams Donovan had been presenting. These drawings actually represent my specialized notation system, translated into standard architectural format. Mr. Donovan isn't familiar with how to interpret these notations, as they incorporate elements beyond conventional architectural symbology. Donovan's confident expression faltered momentarily. Marcus continued, I'd be happy to explain the notation system if helpful, but perhaps more productive would be showing you the actual implementation progress on site. Reynolds nodded decisively. Let's see the real work. As the group prepared to move, Donovan made one more attempt to control the narrative. I can lead the tour, pointing out how we've adapted Marcus's ideas. Actually, Reynolds interrupted, I'd like Mr. Chen to lead since the redesign was his creation. You can certainly add your perspective as we go, Mr. Donovan. The site tour proceeded with Marcus guiding the executives through key structural modifications. At each station, he explained the technical rationale clearly, making complex engineering concepts accessible without condescension. Throughout, Donovan attempted to interject, claiming collaborative credit or minimizing the significance of changes. His interruptions grew increasingly transparent as the tour progressed. At the critical Southwest Foundation section, Marcus demonstrated how the redesigned support system had already eliminated the differential settlement problem that had threatened the building's long-term stability. The original design didn't account for soil composition variations, Marcus explained. Our solution redistributes load paths to accommodate natural settling patterns rather than fighting against them. That was actually a modification I suggested, Donovan interjected, based on my experience with similar soil conditions in previous projects. Reynolds turned to him with an evaluative gaze. Interesting. Can you explain the mathematical basis for the load redistribution pattern? It looks quite sophisticated. Donovan's confident expression froze. He gestured vaguely at the support columns. It's a standard application of counterbalancing forces across multiple junction points. Actually, Marcus corrected gently, it's a specialized application of nonlinear dynamic analysis borrowed from seismic engineering. The mathematical model integrates differential equations that account for soil plasticity under variable compression forces. Reynolds turned to her technical advisor, who nodded confirmation. Impressive approach, she commented. Not standard, at all. As the tour concluded, the executive team's body language told the story. They clustered around Marcus, asking detailed questions about implementation timelines and technical specifications. Donovan found himself literally on the periphery, his attempts to rejoin the central conversation increasingly awkward. Back in the conference room, Reynolds addressed both men directly. I want to thank you both for your time today. Mr. Chen, your redesign is even more impressive in physical implementation than it appeared in documentation. The structural improvements are evident even to non-technical observers. She turned to Donovan. Mr. Donovan, your project management experience is valuable, but I'm concerned about the characterization of your role in the redesign. Corporate records clearly indicate that Mr. Chen was authorized to lead this initiative independently. Donovan's face flushed. I was trying to emphasize the collaborative nature of construction projects. Collaboration is indeed essential. Reynolds agreed, which is why, effective immediately, I'm formalizing the leadership structure. Mr. Chen will have final authority on all structural implementation decisions. Mr. Donovan will retain management of schedule and resource allocation, reporting jointly to Mr. Chen and corporate oversight. The reorganization was diplomatic but unmistakable. Donovan had been partially demoted on his own project, his autonomy curtailed. As the executives departed, the tension between the two men had transformed. What had been active conflict had crystallized into something more defined, a clear power shift with corporate backing. Donovan's expression as he watched the executive cars depart spoke volumes. The battle for the Henderson building had reached a turning point, but Marcus harbored no illusions that the war was over. Some men accepted defeat gracefully. Blake Donovan was not among them. The formal restructuring of project leadership transformed the Henderson site almost overnight. With clear corporate backing, Marcus's redesign implementation accelerated. Work crews who had previously hedged their bets now fully committed to the new structural approach following Marcus's translated drawings with precise attention to detail. Even some of Donovan's longtime loyalists began gravitating toward Marcus's team, recognizing which way the professional winds were blowing. The modular office became the de facto command center, with daily briefings and technical consultations replacing the fragmented communication of previous weeks. For his part, Donovan maintained rigid professionalism, executing his narrowed responsibilities with mechanical efficiency while avoiding direct interaction with Marcus whenever possible. The overt sabotage attempts ceased, though Marcus remained vigilant for subtler forms of obstruction. He's too quiet, Zoe observed during their morning review session, 3 days after the executive visit. It makes me nervous. Focus on the work, Marcus advised. We have a building to save, and the work was progressing remarkably well. The redesigned atrium supports were taking physical form, their elegant efficiency drawing admiration even from skeptical contractors. The foundation remediation had stabilized the differential settlement, measurement data confirming Marcus's calculations to within millimeters. By the end of the week, they had reached a critical milestone, the transition point between existing structure and new design implementation for the East Wing support system. The junction required precise coordination between multiple teams, with temporary bracing maintaining structural integrity during the transition phase. Marcus supervised the operation personally, his specialized notation sheets translated into detailed workflow diagrams that guided each step of the process. The precision was absolute. Each beam placement, each connection point, each load transfer sequence orchestrated like a structural symphony. As the final connection was secured and the temporary bracing removed, the integrated system stood self-supporting for the first time. A small crowd of workers had gathered to witness the moment, sensing its significance. When the structure held, absorbing the transferred load without visible strain, spontaneous applause broke out. "This is why we build," Marcus said quietly to his team. This moment, the success accelerated their timetable, putting them ahead of even Marcus's optimistic projections. That evening, he called Mei Lin with the good news. "The redesign is working." "Better than expected," he told her. "We might actually finish ahead of schedule." "That's amazing, Dad," she replied. "Does this mean the dinosaur Foreman has finally accepted extinction?" Marcus smiled at her metaphor. "He's adapted to changing conditions for now." "Well, I have good news too. I got that research fellowship I applied for. It covers half my tuition for next year." "That's wonderful." Pride swelled in his chest. "Your mother would be so proud. Still need your help with the other half, though," she reminded him. "You'll have it," he assured her. "This project includes a substantial completion bonus if we meet the revised timeline." The next day brought unexpected developments. Marcus arrived to find Donovan waiting in the modular office, reviewing implementation drawings with unusual interest. "Morning, Chen," he said with forced casualness. "Just getting up to speed on today's schedule." Marcus nodded, maintaining professional courtesy. "The North Wing transition begins at 10. Critical path activities are highlighted in the daily briefing." "I've been studying your implementation methodology," Donovan continued. "Innovative approach to the load transfer sequencing." The compliment, however strained, was the first Donovan had offered since Marcus's arrival. "Thank you. It's designed to minimize disruption to existing work." "I noticed." Donovan hesitated, seeming to struggle with his next words. "Look, Chen, I still think the original design was structurally sound, but I can appreciate the elegance of your solutions. Was this a genuine olive branch or tactical positioning?" Marcus chose to accept it at face value. "Different approaches can both have merit. The building is what matters." Donovan nodded stiffly. "Right. Well, I've authorized the material transfers you requested for the North Wing transition. Should be arriving this morning." "Thank you. That helps maintain our schedule." After Donovan left, Zoe approached Marcus's desk. "What was that about?" "Professional adaptation," Marcus replied. "Or strategic repositioning. We'll see which." The morning progressed smoothly, with material deliveries arriving on schedule and work crews transitioning efficiently between phases. By mid-afternoon, the North Wing implementation was advancing ahead of projected timelines. Marcus was reviewing stress test data when Luis burst into the office, out of breath and visibly agitated. "We have a problem," he announced. Donovan authorized a deviation from the redesign specifications for the Northwest support column. Marcus felt a chill of recognition. What kind of deviation? He substituted a different connection plate design, claimed it was a time-saving modification that wouldn't affect structural integrity. "When was this done?" "This morning, while you were in the East Wing. The column's already been installed." Marcus grabbed his tablet and site plans. "Show me." They hurried to the Northwest section, where a massive support column formed part of the critical load path between the foundation and upper floors. At first glance, the installation appeared correct, matching the standard drawings, but Marcus immediately spotted the deviation. A subtle change to the connection plate design that wouldn't be visible in casual inspection, but would significantly alter the load distribution properties. "This isn't a time-saving modification," Marcus said quietly. "It's a deliberate undermining of the redesign integrity." He ran quick calculations on his tablet, modeling the impact of the unauthorized change. The results confirmed his concerns. Under normal conditions, the modified connection would hold, but under peak load or seismic stress, it created a dangerous failure point that could compromise the entire Northwest quadrant. "How do we fix it?" Luis asked. Marcus studied the installed column, considering options. "It's already integrated into the structure. Removing it would require significant disassembly. So Donovan wins this round?" "No," Marcus replied firmly. "We adapt." He began sketching rapidly on his tablet, his specialized notation flowing as he developed a compensatory design that would redistribute the altered load path through adjacent supports. "Get Zoe and Sarah," he instructed. "We need to implement a reinforcement solution before the next phase connections are made. For the next 6 hours, Marcus and his team worked intensively to design and implement a compensatory support system that would mitigate the compromised connection. The solution was elegant but required additional materials and labor that hadn't been budgeted. As they completed the reinforcement installation, Donovan appeared, observing from a distance with an unreadable expression. Marcus approached him directly. "You authorized a non-spec modification to the northwest support column." Donovan shrugged with feigned innocence. "A minor adjustment to improve installation efficiency. Nothing that affects structural integrity." "We both know that's not true," Marcus replied evenly. "The modified connection creates a critical stress point under maximum load conditions. According to your theoretical models, perhaps. In real-world construction, in real-world conditions, it could lead to catastrophic failure," Marcus interrupted. "Which is why we've had to implement additional reinforcement at considerable expense." Donovan's facade of innocence hardened into something colder. "You can't prove the modification would have caused any problems. I don't need to prove it. The mathematics are clear." "Mathematics?" Donovan scoffed. "I've built structures that have stood for decades based on practical experience, not equations." "Mathematics isn't theoretical when it describes physical reality," Marcus countered. "It's the language of structural relationships. They stood facing each other. The fundamental conflict between them distilled to its essence. Experience versus innovation, tradition versus precision, resistance versus adaptation. This project will be completed to the authorized specifications," Marcus said finally. "With or without your cooperation." "We'll see about that," Donovan replied, the brief pretense of collegiality abandoned. Construction has a way of creating unexpected challenges. As Donovan walked away, Marcus realized the executive visit had changed nothing fundamental. The battle had simply entered a new, more subtle phase, one where the stakes were higher and the tactics less visible but no less dangerous. The Henderson building stood between them, its evolving structure a physical manifestation of their conflict. And somewhere within that conflict, its true integrity would be determined. The following Wednesday began like any other on the Henderson site. Marcus arrived early, reviewed implementation progress, and conducted his usual structural inspection before the day crews arrived. Nothing indicated the crisis that would unfold. By mid-morning, at 10:17 a.m., a sound cut through the normal construction cacophony. A sharp metallic groan followed by a series of popping noises that Marcus recognized instantly as bolts shearing under excessive stress. "Everyone out!" he shouted, his voice carrying across the east section. "Clear the area now." Workers scattered as a secondary support structure in the east wing began to visibly deform. 30 seconds later, with a thunderous crack, the temporary bracing collapsed, sending a cascade of steel beams and construction materials crashing to the ground floor. Miraculously, no one was injured. Marcus's early warning had given everyone time to reach safety, but the damage was significant. A section of temporary supports had failed completely, threatening the stability of the connected permanent structure. "What happened?" Zoe demanded, rushing to Marcus's side as they assessed the damage from a safe distance. Marcus was already reviewing the structural plans on his tablet. The temporary bracing configuration was altered. Those weren't the specified connection points. The site safety officer initiated emergency protocols, evacuating non-essential personnel and establishing a collapse perimeter. Donovan arrived. Minutes later, his face a mask of concern that didn't reach his eyes. "Failure in the temporary bracing," he announced to the gathering supervisors. "Looks like a calculation error in the load distribution." Marcus met his gaze directly. "Not a calculation error. A deliberate deviation from the specified bracing pattern." A tense silence fell over the group. The implication was clear. "This wasn't an accident but sabotage." "That's a serious accusation," Donovan replied coldly. "Perhaps your redesign created unanticipated stress points." "The stress points were entirely anticipated," Marcus countered, turning his tablet to display the original bracing specifications, which is why the bracing was designed this way. Someone changed it. Before the confrontation could escalate further, the site structural engineer interrupted. "Whatever happened, we need to stabilize that section immediately. The partial collapse has compromised supporting elements for the northeast corner." Marcus studied the damage, his mind already calculating remediation options. "We need to install emergency supports at these junctions," he said, marking points on the displayed plans. "Then reinforce the primary load path through the intact sections." For the next 14 hours, Marcus led a crisis response that transcended the ongoing conflict with Donovan. The building's integrity was at stake, along with the safety of everyone working to save it. Even Donovan's loyalists followed Marcus's directions without question, recognizing the authority of genuine expertise in a crisis. By midnight, they had stabilized the damaged section and implemented temporary supports that would prevent further collapse. The site structural engineer confirmed that Marcus's emergency solution had averted what could have been a catastrophic progressive failure. As the crisis crews completed the final reinforcements, Marcus found Donovan watching from the site office doorway. "You think I did this," Donovan said. Not a question but a statement. "Someone deliberately altered the bracing configuration." Marcus replied evenly. "Someone with authority to modify approved plans." "I've been in construction for 30 years, Donovan said, voice tight with controlled anger. "I've never compromised safety." "Never." Marcus studied him, seeing something unexpected. Genuine emotion beneath the defensive posture. "Then help me find out who did." For a moment, something like uncertainty flickered across Donovan's face. Then his expression hardened again. "I'll conduct a full investigation. If someone on my crew altered those plans, they're finished." After Donovan left, Zoe joined Marcus as he reviewed the emergency reinforcement work. "Do you think he's telling the truth?" she asked quietly. Marcus considered the question carefully. "About never compromising safety? Possibly. About conducting a real investigation? Unlikely. So what now?" "Now we document everything," Marcus replied. "And we redesign the recovery plan to be better than the original." By dawn, Marcus had developed a comprehensive solution that would not only repair the damage but strengthen the entire East Wing beyond its original specifications. Crisis transformed to opportunity, a principle he'd applied throughout his career. As workers implemented the first phase of his recovery design, Marcus watched the Henderson building slowly healing itself, its structural integrity gradually restored through human intervention and architectural vision. The near catastrophe had changed something fundamental on the site. The abstract battle over design philosophy had become concrete reality, with visible consequences. For the first time, Marcus sensed genuine respect from the construction crews. Not just compliance with corporate mandate but professional recognition. The building was speaking, and finally, everyone was listening. The near collapse changed the Henderson site atmosphere. Teams that had once worked in separate camps now coordinated seamlessly, united by their shared brush with disaster. Marcus's recovery design was being implemented with unprecedented precision, even Donovan's most loyal supporters now following the modified blueprints without question. 3 days after the incident, Marcus received an unexpected email from corporate. Catherine Reynolds was returning for another site visit, this time without advance notice to the project leadership. The message came directly to Marcus, bypassing Donovan entirely. When Reynolds arrived the following morning, her demeanor was pure business. "Show me everything," she instructed Marcus, starting with the collapse site. For 2 hours, Marcus guided her through the damage, the emergency response, and the redesigned recovery implementation. Reynolds asked pointed technical questions that revealed her own engineering background, focusing particularly on the bracing modifications that had precipitated the failure. "And this was the original specification?" she asked, examining Marcus's plans on his tablet. "Yes. The bracing should have been configured like this." He indicated the correct pattern. "Instead, it was installed like this." He showed her photographs of the failed configuration. Could this have been a simple misinterpretation of the plans? Marcus shook his head. "The difference is too significant, and the altered configuration appears deliberate, designed to hold temporarily but fail under specific load conditions." Reynolds' expression darkened. "That's a serious assessment, Mr. Chen. It's the only conclusion supported by the structural evidence." She studied him for a moment. "You've been documenting the implementation issues from the beginning, correct?" "Yes. Every deviation, every accident, every unauthorized modification. I need to see everything, now." In the modular office, Marcus presented his comprehensive documentation, photographs, measurement data, material testing results, and witness statements, all organized chronologically to show the pattern of deliberate obstruction. Reynolds reviewed it silently, her expression growing progressively more grave. When she reached the documentation of Donovan's unauthorized connection plate modification, she paused. "This alone would justify termination," she observed. "There's more." Marcus replied, showing her evidence of material substitutions, falsified, inspection reports, and finally, the bracing modification that had led to the partial collapse. When she finished reviewing everything, Reynolds sat back, her professional composure momentarily shaken. "This goes beyond project sabotage. This is criminal negligence. I believe Mr. Donovan has convinced himself that the original design was adequate," Marcus offered, "that my redesign is unnecessary and his actions justified. That doesn't excuse endangering lives," Reynolds said sharply. "Where is he now?" "Supervising concrete pouring in the West Wing." Reynolds stood. "Have him meet us in the main conference room." 15 minutes. As she left to make calls, Zoe approached Marcus's desk. "Is she going to fire him?" "At minimum," Marcus replied. "This documentation suggests potential criminal liability. Are you ready for that confrontation?" Marcus considered the question carefully. Throughout his career, he had avoided direct conflict whenever possible, preferring to let his work speak for itself. But the Henderson project had forced him beyond his professional comfort zone, into territory where silence equaled complicity. "It's not about being ready," he finally said. "It's about doing what's necessary for the building and everyone who will eventually occupy it." 15 minutes later, Marcus entered the conference room to find Reynolds seated at the head of the table, flanked by 2 men in suits. Corporate security, judging by their demeanor. Donovan sat opposite them, his expression a mixture of defiance and unease. "Mr. Chen," Reynolds acknowledged his arrival. "Please join us." Marcus took a seat halfway down the table, positioning himself as neither aligned with corporate authority nor with Donovan. "I've been reviewing Mr. Chen's documentation of implementation issues," Reynolds began without preamble, "including evidence that suggests deliberate sabotage of the redesign." Donovan's jaw tightened. "Chen's been documenting his paranoid conspiracy theories from day one. Anything to make himself look like the hero saving a doomed project. The evidence is quite specific," Reynolds continued, unmoved. "Unauthorized material substitutions, modified connection designs, altered bracing configurations that directly led to Wednesday's structural failure. Construction involves thousands of decisions daily," Donovan countered. "Not everything follows theoretical blueprints perfectly. These weren't adaptations to field conditions," Marcus interjected quietly. "They were deliberate undermining of critical structural elements, each one calculated to compromise the redesign while appearing superficially compliant." Donovan turned to him, anger breaking through his professional facade. "You come here with your fancy degrees and specialized notation, looking down on people who've been building real structures while you were drawing pretty pictures. 30 years I've been constructing buildings that stand the test of time." "No one is questioning your experience," Marcus replied. "But experience without adaptation becomes dangerous when it calcifies into dogma. Save your fortune cookie wisdom," Donovan snapped. "I know buildings. I know what works. Your redesign is unnecessary academic overkill that's costing millions and delaying completion." Reynolds interrupted the escalating confrontation. "Mr. Donovan, regardless of your opinion about the redesign, the documentation shows you deliberately violated corporate directives and endangered worker safety. That alone is grounds for immediate termination." For the first time, genuine fear flickered across Donovan's face. "You can't terminate me. This project would fall apart without my leadership." "The project nearly fell apart because of your leadership," Reynolds corrected coldly. 3 days ago, your actions could have killed people." Donovan's demeanor shifted abruptly, panic breaking through his defensive anger. "You don't understand. I built my reputation on this project. If your fancy architect makes me look incompetent, I'll never work in this industry again." The raw vulnerability of the admission hung in the air. Marcus recognized the true heart of Donovan's resistance. Not professional disagreement, but existential fear. The Henderson project wasn't just a building to him. It was his legacy, his validation, his identity. "No one is trying to destroy your reputation," Marcus said quietly. "The redesign addresses structural issues that anyone might have missed." "I didn't miss anything," Donovan insisted, but his voice had lost its certainty. "The original design was sound. Then why sabotage the implementation?" Reynolds asked. "If you truly believed your design was superior, you would have documented the failures of the redesign, not deliberately caused them." Donovan had no answer for that. The room fell silent as the implications settled. After a moment, Reynolds spoke again, her tone final. "Blake Donovan, your employment with Henderson. Development is terminated, effective immediately. Corporate security will escort you from the premises. The evidence of negligence will be referred to our legal department for potential criminal referral. Donovan stared at her in disbelief. You're making a mistake. This project needs me. What this project needs is integrity, Reynolds replied. Both structural and professional. She nodded to the security officers. Please escort Mr. Donovan to collect his personal belongings, then off the premises. As Donovan was led away, his final glare at Marcus contained something beyond anger. A mixture of resentment, defeat, and something almost like respect. The confrontation that had been building since Marcus's first day had reached its inevitable conclusion. When the room emptied, Reynolds turned to Marcus. Effective immediately, you're assuming full project leadership responsibilities, both design implementation and construction management. I'm an architect, not a construction manager, Marcus objected. You're the only one who fully understands both the original design and the redesign, Reynolds countered. And after what's happened, we need leadership that puts the building's integrity first. She paused. Unless you'd prefer we bring in someone else? Marcus thought about the Henderson building. Its compromised foundations, its vulnerable support structures, its promise of what it could become if properly realized. He thought about walking away, leaving it to someone else to navigate the complex transition between designs. No, he said finally. I'll see it through. As Reynolds left to make arrangements, Marcus remained alone in the conference room, the weight of his new responsibilities settling over him. The confrontation with Donovan had ended, but the real challenge was just beginning. Transforming a damaged project into the building it was meant to be. News of Donovan's termination spread through the Henderson site like wildfire. By lunchtime, every worker knew that Marcus Chen was now in complete charge, not just of the redesign implementation, but the entire project. The transition of authority created inevitable uncertainty. Donovan had built a loyal team over years, many of whom viewed Marcus with lingering suspicion, despite the evidence of sabotage. The site hummed with whispered conversations and speculative glances as workers waited to see what would change under the new leadership. Marcus called an all-hands meeting for the end of shift. As crews gathered in the partially completed atrium space, he could feel the tension, expectation mixed with apprehension, curiosity tempered by resistance to change. He stood before them without artificial authority, his hard hat and dust-covered, clothes marking him as someone who worked alongside them rather than above them. I'll keep this brief, Marcus began, his voice steady and measured. Blake Donovan is no longer with the project. Corporate has asked me to assume overall project leadership until completion. Murmurs rippled through the assembled workers. No, many of you worked with Donovan for years, Marcus continued. You built relationships and routines. That history deserves respect. He paused, making eye contact with key supervisors. But this building deserves our best work, regardless of who's in charge. He gestured to the structure around them. This isn't about me versus Donovan. It's not about original design versus redesign. It's about creating a building that will stand safely for decades, that will shelter thousands of people who will never know our names, but will depend on our integrity. The murmurs quieted as Marcus spoke directly to their professional pride. Starting tomorrow, we implement a new organizational structure, he explained. Cross-functional teams with shared responsibility for specific sections. No more separation between design and execution. We all work together. We all solve problems together. We all build together. He introduced his core team members, Zoe, Luis, Sarah, and others who had supported the redesign from the beginning. These people will serve as technical leads, but every person on this site has expertise worth hearing. If you see a problem, speak up. If you have a solution, share it. As the meeting concluded, Marcus made one final point. Donovan made serious mistakes, but he also helped build this company over decades. We can acknowledge the failure while respecting the years of contribution. How we talk about him reflects on our character, not his. The measured response struck the right note, neither celebrating Donovan's downfall nor ignoring the legitimate reasons for his termination. As workers dispersed, Marcus could sense a cautious opening, a willingness to give the new approach a chance. Implementation began the next morning. Marcus reorganized the workflow, creating integrated teams that combined design expertise with construction experience. Each team received responsibility for a specific building section, with authority to make real-time adjustments within clearly defined parameters. The modular office transformed into a collaborative workspace where daily planning sessions included representatives from every discipline, Structural, electrical, mechanical, finishing. Marcus conducted these sessions with quiet efficiency, ensuring every voice was heard while maintaining forward momentum. Perhaps most significantly, he instituted a no-blame problem-solving culture. When issues arose, as they inevitably did, in complex construction, the focus remained on solutions rather than fault-finding. This approach gradually eroded the defensive posturing that had characterized the Donovan era. 2 weeks into the new leadership structure, results became visibly apparent. The construction pace accelerated as implementation bottlenecks disappeared. Quality metrics improved as workers took greater ownership of their sections. Safety incidents declined as communication barriers fell. The Henderson building itself seemed to respond to the changed atmosphere, its structural elements coming together with a harmony that even non-architects could sense. The redesigned support system, now properly implemented, displayed an elegant efficiency that contrasted sharply with the over-engineered redundancy of the original plans. Marcus maintained a constant presence throughout the site, his quiet competence and willingness to listen earning respect that his corporate authority alone could never have commanded. Workers who had once mocked his hearing aid now sought his input on technical challenges, recognizing that his different perspective offered valuable insights. 1 month after Donovan's departure, corporate conducted a comprehensive project review. Catherine Reynolds returned with her technical team, spending 2 days evaluating progress against benchmarks. Their conclusion exceeded even Marcus's optimistic projections. The project had recovered the time lost to sabotage and implementation delays, quality metrics surpassed industry standards, and the revised budget showed significant savings over original projections. Impressive turnaround, Reynolds commented during the closeout meeting. The structural integrity issues have been fully addressed, and somehow you've accelerated the schedule while improving quality. The credit belongs to the integrated teams, Marcus replied. When people understand the why behind specifications, they implement the how more effectively. Reynolds studied him thoughtfully. You've transformed more than the building design, Mr. Chen. You've changed the project culture. After the corporate team departed, Marcus walked the site alone, observing the day's final activities as crews wrapped up their shifts. The building had taken on a distinctive character now, neither purely his vision nor Donovan's, but something new that had emerged from conflict and resolution. In the partially completed atrium, he found Roy, Donovan's former assistant foreman, supervising the installation of the redesigned support columns. The man had been among the most resistant to Marcus's leadership initially, his loyalty to Donovan running deep. Looking good, Marcus commented, studying the precision of the installation. Roy nodded, professional pride evident in his posture. The load distribution on these columns is impressive, 30% more efficient than the original design. The casual technical assessment, accurate and delivered without resentment, represented a small but significant victory, not just acceptance of the redesign, but genuine appreciation of its merits. Have you heard from Donovan? Marcus asked, curiosity overcoming professional discretion. Roy hesitated before answering. He's taken a position with a smaller firm, residential, construction mostly. He adjusted his hard hat. What happened here, it hit him hard, harder than I think anyone realizes. Marcus nodded, understanding the complex emotions behind the simple statement. He built good structures for many years. Yeah, he did. Roy turned back to the column installation. But this one's going to be better. As Marcus continued his evening inspection, he realized that the Henderson project had achieved something he hadn't anticipated. Not just structural redemption, but a kind of collective healing. The conflict that had divided the site had ultimately forced everyone to articulate what mattered most. Not personal authority or professional ego, but the fundamental integrity of what they were building together. 3 months after assuming leadership, Marcus stood in the completed east wing, now fully enclosed and awaiting interior finishing. Sunlight streamed through the temporary window openings, illuminating the spaces that would soon become offices, retail shops, public gathering areas. His phone vibrated with a text from Mei Lin. How's my favorite architectural revolutionary? He smiled, typing back, building something that might outlast both of us. Proper monuments usually do, she replied. When's completion? 8 weeks ahead of revised schedule. Bonus is looking likely. Med school thanks you. So do I. Marcus pocketed his phone and continued his inspection, listening to the building, with more than just his ears, feeling its balanced tensions through his fingertips on the support columns. seeing its harmonious proportions with eyes trained by decades of architectural problem-solving. The Henderson building was speaking again, but now it spoke of resolution rather than conflict, of integrity rather than compromise, and everyone, finally, was listening. 6 months after Marcus Chen first arrived at the troubled Henderson site, the completed building stood gleaming in the morning sun, a monument to perseverance, technical excellence, and collaborative problem-solving. What had begun as a project, plagued by structural deficiencies and internal conflict, had transformed into a showcase of architectural innovation and construction quality. The ribbon-cutting ceremony attracted local media, corporate executives, and civic leaders eager to associate themselves with the successful development. A temporary stage had been erected at the building's main entrance with the obligatory oversized scissors and red ribbon prominently displayed. Marcus stood at the back of the gathering crowd, deliberately avoiding the spotlight. His work was embodied in the structure itself, in the elegant support columns, the precisely balanced load paths, the harmonious integration of form and function. Personal recognition held little interest for him. Catherine Reynolds had other ideas. As the ceremony began, she scanned the audience until she spotted him, then gestured insistently for him to join the dignitaries on stage. Marcus reluctantly made his way forward, uncomfortable with the public attention but unwilling to directly refuse the CEO's request. "Ladies and gentlemen," Reynolds began once the initial welcomes concluded, "the building we dedicate today represents more than just an addition to our city's skyline. It embodies the principle that integrity, both structural and personal, forms the foundation of lasting achievement." She recounted the project's journey without mentioning Donovan by name, diplomatically, framing the challenges as technical rather than interpersonal. When issues arose that threatened the building's long-term stability, we were fortunate to have Marcus Chen's expertise to guide us toward solutions. Marcus stood quietly as Reynolds praised his contributions, noting how she carefully balanced recognition of his redesign with acknowledgement of the entire construction team's efforts. Corporate diplomacy at its finest, truth selectively presented. "I'd like to invite Mr. Chen to say a few words," Reynolds concluded, turning expectantly toward him. Marcus hadn't prepared remarks, having not anticipated being called to speak. He approached the microphone with the same measured calm that had characterized his project leadership. "Thank you, Ms. Reynolds," he began. "But the true achievement belongs to the hundreds of skilled workers who transformed designs on paper into physical reality." He gestured toward the construction teams gathered at the edges of the ceremony. "These professionals demonstrated that adaptation is not weakness but strength, that listening to a building as it takes shape is as important as any blueprint or specification." Marcus paused, considering his next words carefully. "Every building speaks to those willing to listen. This one told us it needed a different approach than originally planned. The credit goes to everyone who heard that message and responded, with skill and integrity." The brief remarks earned appreciative applause, particularly from the construction crews who recognized the genuine respect behind his acknowledgement. As Marcus stepped back, Reynolds presented him with a small crystal model of the Henderson building. Corporate recognition of his contribution. The formal ribbon cutting proceeded with predictable ceremony. Photographs were taken, hands were shaken, and gradually the crowd dispersed into tours of the completed structure. Marcus found himself guiding a small group of corporate executives through the architectural highlights, explaining the technical innovations in terms accessible to non-specialists. As they entered the soaring atrium space, the most visibly dramatic example of his redesign, conversations fell silent. Sunlight streamed through the precisely angled skylights, creating shifting patterns across the open central area. The redesigned support system eliminated the need for obstructive columns, creating an expansive, welcoming environment that would serve as the building's social heart. "It's breathtaking," one executive commented. "Hard to believe this was originally designed with massive support columns throughout the space. Different approaches, different results," Marcus replied diplomatically. As the tour concluded, Catherine Reynolds took Marcus aside. "The board has reviewed the project outcomes," she informed him. "The Henderson redesign came in $12 million under revised budget and 8 weeks ahead of schedule. Your completion bonus has been approved, with an additional performance incentive." She handed him an envelope. "We'd also like to discuss a permanent position as Chief Architectural Officer for Henderson Development. Your approach to integrated design and construction oversight has proven exceptionally effective." Marcus accepted the envelope with quiet gratitude. "Thank you." The offer is unexpected but appreciated. May I have some time to consider it? Of course. Though I should mention the position includes a substantial signing bonus and relocation allowance. Reynolds smiled knowingly. Enough to cover several years of medical school tuition, I would imagine. Marcus looked at her in surprise. Corporate research is thorough, Mr. Chen, she explained. We know about your daughter's education. Supporting her ambitions while pursuing your own is admirable. After the executives departed, Marcus remained in the completed building, conducting a final personal inspection. He moved through each section, noting how the constructed reality matched and sometimes improved upon his redesigned vision. Minor adaptations made during implementation had enhanced the original concept, a collaborative evolution he had encouraged rather than resisted. In the West Wing, he encountered Zoe finalizing punch list items with a contractor. She had emerged as a natural leader during the project, her technical skill matched by rare communication abilities. Final walkthrough? She asked as Marcus approached. He nodded. Just saying goodbye. Heard about the corporate offer, Zoe commented. Congratulations. News travels fast. Good news always does. She hesitated. Are you taking it? Marcus considered the question. Still deciding. What about you? I understand Reynolds offered you a senior project management position. Accepted this morning, Zoe confirmed. Hard to walk away from what we've built here, and I don't just mean the building. He understood completely. The Henderson project had created more than a physical structure. It had forged relationships, systems, and approaches that transcended conventional construction practices, something worth preserving and expanding. As the day ended, Marcus found himself alone in the completed atrium, watching the setting sun cast long shadows through the space. He adjusted his hearing aid, filtering out the background hum of mechanical systems to focus on the building's subtle acoustics. The way sound moved through the redesigned space, neither echoing chaotically nor falling dead against absorptive surfaces. His phone vibrated with a message from Mei Lin. Decision made about the job offer? He typed back. Nearly. How would you feel about relocating after graduation? Depends. Good hospitals there? Some of the best. Then I'm in. Whatever. You decide. Marcus smiled, pocketing his phone. His daughter's adaptability, so like her mother's, had sustained them both through years of international projects and career uncertainties. As he prepared to leave, Marcus noticed a familiar figure observing the building from across the street. Blake Donovan, standing silently in the gathering dusk. Their eyes met briefly through the glass facade, neither man making any gesture of acknowledgement. After a moment, Donovan nodded once, not in friendship or reconciliation, but in professional recognition, then turned and walked away. Some conflicts resolved, others merely concluded. The Henderson building would stand as testament to both. 3 days later, Marcus signed the corporate offer, accepting the role of chief architectural officer with specific conditions, including establishment of an integrated design-build methodology for all future projects and a corporate scholarship program for engineering students from underrepresented backgrounds. His first official act was to promote Zoe Santos to lead the implementation team for Henderson's next major development. His second was to establish mandatory structural integrity reviews at multiple project stages, ensuring that future buildings would speak and be heard long before problems became crises. 6 weeks later, Marcus stood at the baggage claim in a new city waiting for Mei Lin to arrive for her medical school orientation. As she emerged from the arrival gate, he felt the familiar swell of paternal pride. His daughter, brilliant and determined, pursuing her own path of healing and service. So, this is home now, she asked after their embrace, gesturing to the cityscape visible through the terminal windows. For now, he replied. The Henderson Tower is there, just left of center. She studied the distinctive silhouette against the skyline. It's beautiful. Different from your usual style. It evolved beyond my original vision, Marcus explained. Became something better through conflict and collaboration. The best designs usually do, Mei Lin observed with wisdom beyond her years. So do the best people. As they drove toward their new home, Marcus reflected on the journey that had brought him here. From the mocked outsider with a hearing aid to the architectural leader whose defect had become his greatest strength, tuning his perception to structural harmonies others couldn't hear. The Henderson building stood as his most visible achievement, but not his most significant. That lay in the transformation of a construction culture, in the integration of vision and execution, in the demonstration that listening, with more than just ears, was the foundation of true architectural integrity. Different approaches, different results, and sometimes, the most profound difference came from seeing disability not as limitation, but as perspective, a unique vantage point from which to reimagine what was possible.